Chair, you have a live mic.
Good morning, friends and family. We're in for the budget workshop. And I guess, first of all, we got Mr. Johnson.
If you'd like, we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance, sure. Go ahead, Rick.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Play ball. You want to? Oh yeah.
Good morning, Commissioners, and welcome to our 2025 budget workshop. So we have this broken down into sections. We're going to start with a general overview. We're going to move on to court and related agencies, then the constitutional officers, the county manager's agency, the county attorney, Board of County Commissioners, and then a recap and summary discussion. We do have our partners here from Resource X, and so they're going to be participating throughout this conversation. And we are going to change up the way we handle the speakers for today so that we're able to take them after each section. So if somebody's here to speak on, for example, courts, they don't have to wait until the end of the day. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Johnson to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Christopher Johnson, your Director of Corporate Financial and Management Services. I'll be doing the general overview today before I hand it over for a quick briefing from our friends at Resource X. So just to jump right in, I just want to kind of get us oriented on where we are in the budget process. So up on the screen here, you have your budget timeline. As you recall, in February, we started with the first initial strategic planning AUIR budget policy workshop. After that, in March, we adopted our budget policy, the board's budget policy. On the 14th, last Friday, you all received your recommended budget books from our office. And today, down there at the bottom in bold, is our priority-based budgeting workshop. Moving forward, if we're looking ahead here in the timeline, on 7/1, we will receive the certified taxable value from the property appraiser. That'll be utilized to determine our required millage rate and to determine our maximum millage rate, which we will bring to the board on July 9th for adoption. Again, that millage rate is going to be the maximum millage rate that we can utilize moving forward in the process. On the 12th, the board will receive their tentative budgets from the budget office. And then by August 4th, we will send the millage rates, the rollback rates, and the information for the first public hearing to the property appraiser. The property appraiser will send out the trim notices to taxpayers by August 24th. And then moving on to the right there, we have our first public hearing on September 5th, our second public hearing on September 19th. And in the middle of there is this is kind of a public service announcement. Any taxpayer that wishes to address the Value Adjustment Board, the deadline for that is typically the second Friday of September, which this year is September 13th. Any questions on any of that timeline-wise? All right, then we'll jump right in. Okay, the FY25 budget characteristics. The budget in front of you is presented and is balanced, and it was prioritized in conjunction with our friends at Resource X. This budget remains a flexible planning tool. It provides sufficient budget required to conduct the business of government. The document reflects the best efforts of your staff and the constitutional officers to maintain and, where appropriate, enhance services to benefit the residents and visitors of this county. And the budget provides the financial approach for execution of the county strategic plan. And if you notice behind me, this is kind of, we put a easel up with our strategic plan, just so it'll be in the view of the camera today. Moving on. The budget includes funding for strategic priorities, included but not limited to DAS facilities, aquatics capital maintenance, strategic real estate acquisitions. Specifically, we're looking at sheriff acquisitions, cybersecurity, Vanderbilt Beach Road Phase 2, 951 Golden Gate to Green Boulevard expansion, roadway resurfacing, and funding for employee recruitment and retention. I'm going to kind of go through a few of the some economic indicators to kind of show you how our current economic landscape is looking. County single-family permits issued in April of this year totaled 214. This is a 16% increase from April of 2023. Collier County's unemployment rate was 3.5% in April. It's a slight increase over the 2.7% last year. The county's unemployment rate is slightly above the Florida rate of 3.3% and modestly below the United States rate for April of 3.9%. The median single-family home value has dropped slightly to $889,000 from $922,000. It's a decrease of 3.6%. With that said, single-family home sales rose to 508 in April, an increase of 8% from the prior year. Visitation to the destination totaled 1,667,000 for October to April, for the October to April 2024 period. This is 7.7% higher than last year. In April 2024, the Miami-Fort Lauderdale Consumer Price Index for all urban customers rose to 4.5%. The core inflation index for all items less food and energy was 5.8% over the same period. Some of the key notes here: the electricity prices actually decreased 11.1%, and that's due to the surcharge being lifted from the hurricanes. Food costs modestly increased 0.8%. Cost of goods and services grew 5.6%, and prices increased 7.2% for rent of a primary residence. Going to jump right into our FY25 tax policy. Based on policy, tax rate is based on the budget requirements. The FY25 recommended budget developed by the county manager in front of you is built on the rolled back tax rate. What this means is it includes the net new taxable value, the ad valorem associated with the net new taxable value. And we'll get onto that in the next slide. The millage rates were developed in the general fund and unincorporated area general fund operating budgets utilizing a priority-based budgeting approach. Further program adjustments throughout this process may result in changes to the actual millage rate. And then our MSTUs were limited to a millage rate sufficient to cover their current operations and any capital planned allocations. So now we'll jump into the preliminary taxable value. You'll see the chart there has the prior year, and at the far right column, you'll see the current year. There's a $12.1 billion taxable value increase countywide. $4.1 billion of that is net new taxable value or taxable value associated with growth. The tax related to that growth taxable value is included in the rolled back millage rate. For the unincorporated area, the increase was $7.7 billion, $2.7 billion related to new taxable value. And according to the state's estimating conference, they project continued tax base increases over 25 and 26, 10.2% in 25 and 7.1% for tax year 26. And that's tax year, so 2025 would be our FY26, 2026 would be our FY27. And this is just kind of an interesting chart that shows the trend of our taxable value. If you look at this, the top is the general fund, the bottom is the unincorporated area general fund. The increases in taxable value over the last 5 years in both areas is about 50%. So it's significant. Going into our preliminary taxing scenarios. As I stated, the taxable value increase related to net new or growth was $4.1 billion in the general fund. Highlighted in green there on the first row, you'll see the tax dollars associated with that, $12.3 million. Then you have the additional ones for the countywide. The total in the countywide based on the net new growth is $13.1 million. And then right below that is the unincorporated area general fund. The net new growth of $2.7 billion there results in a ad valorem revenue increase of $1.8 million. Moving on to the blue column there, you'll see this is the tax value increase with the millage neutral rate. So essentially taking the same millage rate we have this year and applying it to the new taxable value. In the general fund, that was $12.1 billion in taxable value. That results in $36.7 million in additional ad valorem revenue. And again, if you go down to the subtotal for countywide, it would be $39.5 million. And in the unincorporated area, it would result in $5.2 million in additional ad valorem revenue. And then finally, in the column on the right there, you'll see the variance between your rollback rate and your millage neutral rate. So based on the discussions we had in our February workshop, that's kind of the range that we're looking at here to set these final millage rates between the rollback and the millage neutral rate. Any questions on any of that?
Troy.
All good? All right.
Anybody lit up? No.
Moving on to the a few additional FY25 budget highlights. The budget presented to you, the net budget is $2.088 billion. That's an increase of $92.9 million over FY24, which was $1.995 billion. The general fund budget is at $688.3 million. That's an increase of $890,000 over FY24, and the unincorporated general fund is budgeted at $84.4 million. This is an increase of $655,000 over 2024. Overall, the recommended budget is within guidance for the county manager's agency, with operating budgets funded through general and unincorporated general fund based on their net cost impact. Net cost impact is your program expense minus your revenue, basically how much of the general fund is supporting you. That's across the board. Most divisions were actually under guidance this year. And as you page through your book and as the departments come up and do their presentations, you'll be able to see those compliant sheets at the front of each section.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a quick question? Just so I understand then, the budget's built on a rolled back millage rate basis, and using that basis, the increase in revenue will be enough to keep the county within guidance of the 3.5%.
Correct.
Okay, so millage, rollback millage is kind of where you're heading.
On the operating side, yes. To get to the rollback millage, there were some challenges on the capital side a few adjustments we had to make to achieve that.
Great.
And we can go over those if you'd like, or we can save it for a wrap-up conversation.
Sounds like it makes our job a little bit easier. What is the impact on using the rollback millage rate? What is the impact on Conservation Collier?
On Conservation Collier specifically? Let me just cut back here. So the rolled back rate for Conservation Collier would generate an increase of $707,000 next year, an additional $707,000. So the total would be $31.8 million. If you went to millage neutral, you'd be at $33.6 million, or an increase of 2.5. And keep in mind with Conservation Collier, you do have a ceiling on that of 0.25 mils, which would have been which is above and beyond the millage neutral rate.
Great, thank you. That sounds good.
No problem. All right, expanded service request. Budgeted county manager expanded service requests include 27 full-time employees plus 10 vehicles, and operating increases for EMS, code enforcement, domestic animal services, the Immokalee CRA, human resources and facilities. The total of these requests is $4,012,900. In addition, there's a budget expanded request for the clerk of courts, which includes funding to support improvements to the SAP payroll system of $208,800. That expanded service request falls within the 3.5% increase from compliance that we allowed. So she's within that amount with the expanded service request. Moving on, here's kind of a breakdown of where these are. Three FTEs in human resources, 10 FTEs in code enforcement, 4 staff members for domestic animal services. We have a facilities request of $1 million. That's for an HVAC preventative maintenance program. We have a hardening of an employee in the Immokalee CRA, and we have another crew, 9 paramedics for EMS. And I already explained to you the clerk of courts, so that's for the SAP time and attendance upgrade. Any questions on any of those at all? All right. Investment in the workforce. Per budget policy for FY25, the recommended budget includes a 3% wage increase to all classifications, an additional 1.5% for the implementation of a merit-based incentive program, and a 0.5% pay plan maintenance component to strengthen targeted classifications that are under market. The employee health care, per the budget policy, the recommended budget includes a 7% increase to the existing rate structure. These are your CRA and economic development zone transfers. The general fund this year will be transferring $14.9 million to these zones and CRAs, and the unincorporated area general fund will be transferring about $1.8 million for a total of $16.7 million. This is up $2.3 million from last year, and if you recall in our discussions in September, this is directly related to the millage rate. So if you change the millage rate, these numbers will fluctuate based on their increment. On to reserves. General fund reserves increased to $78.1 million, or 12.8% of expenses. That's within the budget guidance of 8 to 16%. Unincorporated area general fund reserves modestly decreased to $5.9 million, or 7.5% of expenses. Below on the left, you'll see the graph for the general fund, the trend for general fund reserves, and on the right is the unincorporated general fund reserves. The reason for the drop in the unincorporated area general fund reserve is the anticipated transfer that we've all discussed one-on-one to Conservation Collier being reduced. So we had to reduce some of our reserves to accommodate the operations. Moving on to the capital budget. This is the overall capital budget. This year it's programmed at $686 million. You can kind of see the breakdown there. The majority of the capital is in our public utilities department, as would be expected, followed by our transportation network, and then the office of the county manager, which includes all of our general governmental facilities and our TDC. Any questions on this one at all? All right. So this slide depicts the general fund and unincorporated area general fund transfers to capital. What I wanted to point out on this slide is you'll see the year-over-year transfer has been reduced. The overall program hasn't been reduced by much. What we're doing is we're utilizing that capital reserve in our countywide capital fund 3001 to fund some of the projects moving forward. So the amount being transferred out of the general fund is reduced, whereas the capital is still in line with what we've done in previous years. So if you look at this next slide, you can see the total capital for the unincorporated and general fund funded capital budgets is $96.13 million. And of that, we're kind of looking at this another way. What are we doing with this money? We have $73.6 million going into renewal and replacement projects, $18.8 million going into kind of new named projects, and then we have another category that's kind of like our softwares and planning and those types of things. Any questions on any of this?
Chris, can you go back to the screen before that?
Certainly.
First, the next one. Yeah, before that one there. We got monitoring in a capital fund account, Sea Turtle monitoring.
That's dealt with as a project. So it's a project fund. So what happens is there's two funding sources for sea turtle monitoring, the general fund and then the TDC, and that goes into a project so that money can roll over on its own every year. So it's kind of a mechanism to, I guess, administer the program. We do that as well in our landscaping.
Yeah, when I saw service thing in a capital fund, it just made me question it. So thank you.
No, it's a very good question, and we can look at that. Any other questions? Yep.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
On the Parks and Recreation repairs and maintenance, $6 million. I'm sorry. The Parks and Recreation repairs and maintenance is $6.3 million. A couple questions. We have a fund, I believe, that has about $10 million left in it for aquatic facilities.
Correct.
Should that be on this list, or?
This is just general fund and unincorporated general funded capital. In the overall capital, it is part of that 668 or 86 million.
Understood. Then in terms of the amount of money that's on that line item, is that going to be sufficient to deal with the aquatic issues that we are faced with?
There's $1 million included from the general fund, and then the 10 million from the bond. And currently, I know at this moment, I believe, and I'll kind of look at Ed a little bit here. We're moving forward with kind of an assessment of the aquatics. So at the moment, moving forward with the 11 million, I think we're in a pretty good spot until we have an overall assessment of what needs to be done. And Ed, if you want to add to that, I can.
No, I don't want to add anything, or if you're asking Ed, I don't need any further clarification on it. I think you've addressed it.
Okay.
But in reference to animal services and the some of the newly discovered needs there, is that something that is included in these numbers here?
Yes, sir, it is. There's $3.5 million specifically for animal services, $2.5 million for the current facility, and we put $1 million aside to look towards the potential of another facility out to the east.
All right, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
More is that money compared to what we did last year? What's the delta? Those are increases?
There was not a budgeted project for that in the general countywide capital fund last year. So yes, it is. Yes,
So
it is.
that's a new added money that we didn't do last year.
Correct. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Fabian with Resource X.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, commissioners. Good morning, staff and administration, and good morning, members of the public. My name is Chris Fabian, and I'm here with my colleague Jesse Muniz from Resource X, as we have completed your first implementation of priority-based budgeting as a county government. So I want to extend my sincerest gratitude and appreciation to this board, especially Commissioner Chris Hall, for bringing priority-based budgeting to the county. We will begin to infuse the impacts of priority-based budgeting in your very first year overall. As a recap, the organization has accomplished a great deal in a short amount of time in your first implementation of priority-based budgeting. You have scored over 600 individual programs and services across the county government. So that's the identification of every single program that you offer, the cost allocation of personnel and non-personnel. Your entire operating costs are allocated, so you know the programs that you provide and the costs of providing those programs. And those programs have been scored relative to, as Chris mentioned, your strategic plan priorities, to understand which programs have the greatest degree of alignment with your priorities and which programs have a lesser degree of alignment overall. Programs were scored not only against your priorities, but other key reasons that the county offers programs, including degree of mandate. Many of your programs are required by state law or the federal government, but some programs are not. Every program now has a score to it for degree of mandate, cost recovery, population served, degree of reliance, and change in demand. That is no small undertaking, and the virtue of having this data is that we can bring it to bear in today's discussion as you go through and evaluate every budget proposal that comes before you. Secondly, not only are we able to frame budget proposals, which we'll get into how that has been used already in this year's budget process, but we have a program evaluation. So by virtue of scoring every single program, as we will present at the end of today's presentation, we can cross-reference every program you offer based on its scoring criteria with every other organization who has gone through priority-based budgeting to offer resource reallocation opportunities and new revenue generation opportunities, some of which can be used throughout the process.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
When you went through that list of the priorities,
that you set for each individual area before you score it, are those priorities weighted differently? So they have, within those priorities, they also have different weights as far as the importance and what you put on it. I don't want to oversimplify the process, but you ran through some really important things that you use as criteria, but they're weighted differently as far as importance?
You are correct to say that the priorities have a higher degree of meaning and influence on the final score of any given program. So the board priorities that you are trying to deliver to the residents of Collier County,
Right.
as opposed to those basic program attributes, degree of mandate, cost recovery, population served, have a lesser weighting overall. So great question. You're exactly right. Go ahead.
Just for us, when you have a question, just go for it. Well, I'd rather this be a conversation than me trying to watch this board and not focusing.
Pretty much is.
Sounds great. So throughout today's presentation, we will be jumping in, Commissioner Hall, as you mentioned, when we have anything to offer from a priority-based budgeting perspective. But most importantly, we will be the final presentation today to describe how priority-based budgeting has been infused into this process already and where you go next with the list of program-specific opportunities for each and every program throughout the county overall. As Chris has on the screen here, I do want to at least give you a prelude to many of the opportunities that have come up already for which priority-based budgeting has helped to identify opportunities for organizational adjustments, including a workforce prioritization pool, a way to utilize human resources in an optimal manner, process improvements and resource realignment from several of the departments, revenue opportunities and fee adjustments, program partnerships as well, which is a key theme for all of the programs that we'll get into at the end, and level of service analysis. So you will hear these throughout the day today, specifically as departments make their presentations, but these have already been acted upon in the proposed budget that you have before you. So with that, I'll thank you, and we'll get on with the day.
All right.
Mr. Johnson, you would explain like you did with me yesterday, the workforce prioritization pool?
Certainly, certainly. So what we've done here, what the county manager has directed is we have taken positions that have been vacant for an extended period of time on hold or are kind of no longer necessary in the programs where they reside, and we've put those into a cost center or a pool to be utilized strategically for initiatives from the county manager, and anything we need to kind of have what did I use yesterday? A snipe team to go out and deal with when I was talking to Commissioner Collier. So it allows us to take these human resources and prioritize them for the things that are important or urgent. And just to give you just kind of show you where these all came from. This slide here kind of depicts where we pulled a few of these positions. In public services, there were library positions that have been vacant, some parks positions, and a few positions in operations. Under the management offices, we had a few positions in facilities, one in communications, and in transportation, there were 3 in transportation and 2 in stormwater. So there's
That means, that doesn't mean that they can't be filled. It just means that we're sort of putting up a cover over and pulling them all together and having a little bit more of a fluid system of how we can utilize them best, right? It doesn't mean that these positions couldn't be filled in the library, in the park, or what have you, correct?
Precisely.
We're not removing those.
Precisely. It's a process improvement. In the past, everyone, these were my positions, these are here. Now it becomes, let's go through the pool. As positions vacate and are not filled, we can put them in the pool. As if we need a librarian, it comes up and it was one that has been removed from there to go to the pool, we would take one out of the pool and utilize it for that as well. So it's a new way of looking at it, new way of looking at things.
Think of it like a day worker program where you need labor and you pull from the pool, and then when you're done, you put it back in the
Put it
pool.
back in the pool.
Happy.
All right. Any other questions on that? If not, we'll jump into our first department, which is the courts and the court-related agencies. Don't mind me. I'm going to switch this.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. My name's Chuck Rice. I'm the Court Administrator for the record. Good morning. With me today is Amara Fox, State Attorney. I'd like to, thank you guys in the county and the Budget Office, Chris and his staff with AJ and Maggie for their help and support with this budget this year. Also like to recognize a couple of our staff that makes the court system runs. If you just raise your hand to be recognized when I announce your name, I have with me today Carrie Hickson, our Operation Director. Beside her is Alir Rivera. She's our Program Coordinator. Beside her is Juan Ramos. He heads up our Probation Department. And to his left is Jeff Nichols, our Director of our Criminal Division. So we're here today to submit a $7 million budget. That's 1% less than what our overall budget was last year for operating. We were able to do that through an assessment of all of our court business units and requirements in an effort to develop the most cost-effective budget possible. And in doing that, I'm glad we did this. We looked at your 2024 strategic plan, and at this point, usually I highlight some of our programs and the successes the courts have, but I'd like to take a different avenue this year and show and just mention about 5 or 6 items of how the court aligns with your strategic plan for 2024, if that's okay. 1, under your vision to be the best community in America. Well, that starts with public safety, strong families, and individuals. We try to accomplish that on a daily basis. Number 2, you support health, wellness, and human services. We align with that through our drug court, veterans court, mental health courts, our domestic violence unit, our dependency court, and teen court. 3, under responsible governing. Your strategic plan talks about promoting data-driven decision-making through performance management and measuring the results. We absolutely are on board with that, and we do that on a daily basis through our case management, the court stats and court tools we do, and our probation statistics. Not only do we track that, we measure it, and then we reevaluate it. We have a saying, I like to say, train, try, measure, repeat. 4, encourage community engagement and participation. We certainly do that and run parallel with that in that we have small claims mediator volunteers. We have a foster care review board made up of volunteers out of the community, our teen court volunteers. And we also provide courthouse tours to schools, civic associations, and basically anybody that requests a courthouse tour. 5, safeguard taxpayer money by fiscal stewardship and sound budget oversight. As you know, the last several years, we've always come in way below target. We're able to do that just by being good stewards of the money. Our budget is self-prioritized just by the nature of what we do. However, we have a unique position where we deal with some state funds too, as the clerk does. And I know the clerk is a big champion of trying to get the state money and being a great steward of the county funds as we are. So we did realign our priority goals and was able to reduce our guardianship budget by nearly $200,000 this year. The other thing that you mentioned as a priority is cybersecurity, and I think that's an issue for everybody. We're dealing with that through threats of cyber attacks and ransomware, and obviously we got to continue to maintain and purchase hardware and software to combat that. So with that, I think you see what the courts are doing aligns very well with your strategic plan. And with that, Amara.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Amira Fox, your State Attorney for the 20th Circuit. And I have with me also Debbie Stambro, our Executive Director, who actually handles the budget for me and does a wonderful job. So she is here in case I tell you anything wrong, but I'm sure I won't. I wanted to come, even though we have a decrease in our ask of you this year, we have actually been able to eliminate a position that you had funded for us by restructuring, using technology. We've been very efficient at being able to eliminate certain positions, and one of them impacts Collier County. So you'll see that we actually have a decrease in our budget to the tune of $59,600. But I wanted to come to just personally thank you for your support of our office and for the court system throughout the circuit, in particular here in Collier County. I'm sure you all already know this, but Collier County has maintained for over a decade And the circuit has maintained the lowest crime rate in the state of Florida. And I always tell people that's no accident. That's because we have the most wonderful law enforcement and wonderful local government that supports us. And last year, what you did for us was you increased the money that you gave us in order to allow me to start a specialized narcotics felony division, which we had already established in Lee County with that commission's help. You followed fast on their heels of allowing me to do the same thing here in Collier and giving me enough extra funding for an assistant state attorney, an investigator, and a member of our support team. Charlotte County then said, oh, we'll do the same. So I have been able to establish in this circuit a narcotics specialized felony unit that handles these high-end drug trafficking investigations. They work as part of our narcotics enforcement task force team, which has been immensely successful in taking out huge amounts of fentanyl and other drugs, arresting many, many people who are now serving lots of years in prison. So that's really thanks to all of you. I wanted to tell you your money has gone to very good use. We do have a specialized attorney here now in narcotics that works hand in hand with our wonderful sheriff's office here and our 2 police agencies at bringing down these large-scale drug traffickers. And also, I want to tell you, specializing in drug overdose and poisoning deaths. We've had our grand jury here in Collier recently indict somebody on a drug overdose death, and we will continue to do so using that money to fund our specialized prosecutors. So I just wanted to tell you thank you for all you do for the court system. It really does make a difference.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
I just, give me the short version, but a big delta savings that I saw, and like you said, very impressive how, doing more things with less. But court-related technology, was that like sort of a one-time expense last year where you upgraded something and then you just didn't need it? Why was that?
As far as unused funds in there?
Yeah. Well, I just noticed the big difference. It was, $500,000 was what was adopted in 2024, and then it's, it's much less for current. So I was just curious. I was kind of setting the table for you to give you a chance to say, here's what we did. I mean, yeah. So here you go. I'm throwing you the softball. Give me the, home run.
But basically, sometimes the timeliness of the hardware and servers we buy.
Right.
It's all pretty much on a calendar basis, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, when they need refreshed and everything. And we're always trying to put off as long as we can any purchases to conserve money, just for that fact, so you can see that decrease in the budget.
Okay, got it. The young lady in the back just raised her hand and said everything you said was untrue. So did you want to come? No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, sir.
One little thing, and this is something that you're going to be participatory in, is we recently had an issue in Immokalee with our CRA and MSTU offices. And there's been some discussion, money appropriated for planning and design for the remodel of the government complex in Immokalee. And I just want you to have it on your radar that lease extension did not come to fruition. We thought we had more time than what we have. The lease out there at the Career Source Center is over in July of next year. So we all need to be moving up on our priority list the remodel monies necessary for that old courtroom that's in Immokalee that hasn't been used in excess of 20 years, and the clerk of court's office in the back, and the tax collector's offices, as well as the county commission offices. So keep that on your radar as you're going through for what we're going to need to do out there, please.
Yes, sir. And we're fully intending to. That space is available for the county's use as far as the courts are concerned.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right. Thank you very much. Moving on. Next is the sheriff.
Morning, everyone. Kevin Rambos, Collier County Sheriff. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this morning. And you know, I know we still have some challenges in our community and a few for the future, but I believe we have had an amazing year as a community. And for our part, that is really due to the outstanding work of the men and women of the Collier County Sheriff's Office who are committed to service each and every day. And also to your leadership, and particularly for us, your support of law enforcement and all of public safety. I want to thank the county manager and her staff for the day-to-day support that we need, and the community for supporting law enforcement and professional law enforcement that allows us to do our job. And that is one large element on how we are so successful. I also want to thank our command staff. I didn't bring everybody with us today, but you know, starting with Colonel Bloom, our chiefs, our executive and command staff, and certainly our great admin section and finance director, Stephanie, who does a great job. I also want to recognize the partnership we have with our fire rescue services in Collier County. I can tell you that around the state and around the nation, there are few organizations that have the partnership that we have. And that is absolutely works toward the positive of responding to emergency situations in Collier County, both now and training for the potential of any event. And I'll touch a little bit on that as we go forward. But I want to talk a little bit this time about how we build our budget, because I think I know you're familiar with it, but I thought that for the public's perspective, I wanted them to get a sense of how we get to where we are when I submit my certification of need to you in accordance with Florida state statute. So our budget and the creation of it is always in line and supportive of our overall mission. And of course, our mission is to preserve and protect the lives, property, and constitutional guarantees of all persons. So that's pretty straightforward. In order to do that, we have built a strategic plan, much like you were talking about earlier, with priority goals and objectives. And when we look at budget formulation, we make sure that everything that we're looking for is supportive of that strategic plan. We have all members of our leadership team involved in the process, and we're focused on our priorities as well. And just to give you a sense, if you think about one of our patrol districts, so you're not the same as your districts, but in our patrol district, we have a lieutenant that runs the operation. We have lieutenants throughout the organization. They're in charge of bureaus. They start from the bottom up to develop what needs they see for the coming year. They then submit that to their captain and director level, which is the division level. They will review each of those requests, and they actually have to make a presentation to a board or group consisting of the chief of admin, the director of finance, the colonel, and they actually go through and review each and every request, again, really to make sure that they align with the strategic plan and the reason that we're making the request. The other thing I think that's important to know is there are specific requirements under Florida State Statute 30 with regard to sheriff's duties and responsibilities. And everything that we submit to you has to be compliant with that as well. We're currently using the Tyler Munis System ERP, or Enterprise Resource Planning software tool. That helps us with integrating our finance and accounting. It allows us to track everything that we're doing. And as I understand it, Tyler has now purchased Resource X, which is what you're using. So we don't know what or how that may change what we do in the future, but we're certainly looking forward to see if there are any new and better ways that we can operate. You know, we just think of best practices for zero-based budgeting, bottom to top, and that's how we formulate the budget. But there are a couple other things that we utilize, and it's not done every year. Some are every other year. But two important things. In preparation for where we're headed, both annually and in the future, we've commissioned a population and growth study from David Farmer. You have as well. He has helped us in the past to look toward the future. We're currently looking at updating that study today. So we take that information and projection when we're thinking about budgets not only today but in the future. The other thing that's really, I believe is really very important is that, you know, we are a nationally accredited agency. And how that relates to budget is we do periodic workload and organizational reviews that are mandated under the accreditation process. That lets us know and rebuild, refocus, ensure that we're not only meeting our priorities both now and for the future, but also change things, because it really forces you to go look and review. So it's not only best practices nationally, but it helps us to build our system. So what are the results of all that? U.S. News & World Report, safest community out of 150 communities in the nation. That's what that gets us. Best place to retire, along with everything that you're doing and your leadership in the county to what we do for public safety. Absolutely the best place in the country to live. That is the overriding overall result. But you know, we've got some individual things that I think are important to highlight. One, your SWAT team here in Collier County, again, and they've done this before, but this past year at their SWAT Roundup competition ranked #1 nationally for their skills and abilities. That is fabulous. Your Corrections Emergency Response Team, which is a SWAT team for the jail, they ranked #2 in their competition nationally. So and I say that to show the quality of the training, of the equipment, all of which you support to enable us to accomplish. We've had some legislative successes. We had the massage parlor bill, and that was requested by us, worked on by your sheriff's office to help thwart human trafficking in our community. We do a lot with human trafficking, but we think that is going to be helping what we do for the future. A fentanyl enhancement bill for public safety, that was passed. And what that does is it enhances penalties if you recklessly endanger the lives of a first responder, fire, rescue, EMS, and law enforcement. Your penalties can be enhanced at the end of your sentence. So we thought that was critically important because, you know, we've had 2 of our deputies historically that have been overcome by fentanyl, both saved by Narcan. So we are thankful for all of that. We created a comprehensive laced and lethal drug program, anti-drug program for fentanyl. Has 4 component parts: school education for our kids, community awareness, enforcement, which we are doing a lot of. The state attorney just mentioned it. We're not only a part of her teams, but I can tell you in the first year, and actually the first 6 months of that program, we had 57 arrests for the sale of fentanyl right here in Collier County. And then our exposure control element of that, which really helps to protect our law enforcement officers. And by the way, we have had requests from across the nation for that part of our plan. We send them the whole plan because there was really no one comprehensive plan that dealt with this. And so we are very, very proud of that. A lot of technology advances. I won't get into that unless you want to. But we're also looking at the future. And I think with what's going on around the world, there are a lot of concerns out there. And, you know, we're looking at three main directions: safety, self-reliance, and security. And, you know, we've always dealt with safety, but we are trying to become more self-reliant because, as we've known from the natural disasters that we've had, and who knows about the future of other disasters, we certainly will get help if people can get here or if they're not engaged in the same disaster. And there have been times when our help has had to leave because other parts of the state were hit as well. So we're looking at a variety of different ways to address that. We're looking at how to secure ourselves as a community. And there's a couple of ways that we're doing that. We have just implemented the start of a community emergency response team. We have our first training within the last 2 to 3 weeks. So we're going to build a cadre of residents, citizens who want to participate and help there in a variety of ways, from communications and ham radio all the way to technical capabilities that they might bring to the organization. We're increasing our volunteer corps overall, and then we are creating a new emergency volunteer capability. And in fact, tomorrow night I'm going to be meeting and giving a presentation to the 1013 Club, which is retired law enforcement officers here in Collier County. And we're going to look to them. We provide them the opportunity to certify to carry a firearm each year. So we meet and greet and know them. And we've started to ask if they would be interested, if we ever needed assistance for a particular event or incident, would they be interested in assisting? And of course, cops are cops, and they said absolutely. So we're going to go do a presentation tomorrow night.
Commissioner Colwell, did he say yes to that? You got him on the list,
I put
Sheriff?
his name on the list already, so.
Okay, I just want to make sure he's on there.
He's coming, without a doubt.
He's sitting over there quiet.
I know.
Okay, Dan, they're looking for you.
So we're also doing, we are looking at Texas A&M University for providing some community awareness training, some preparation training, and that's a community-based training for those who are interested in doing that. We're also looking at connecting with an online university as well that we got referred to from them. So if you can't come into an actual training course, you can take it online. So it's really all about continuing what we do, keeping our community safe, and then making sure our community, our residents, are prepared for whatever comes. And I'll leave it open to questions.
I got some questions. No, I'll just jump. Sheriff, thank you so much, for coming. And I said this last year. We don't get separate reports from every department. We get a few. I said this last year. Yours is always phenomenal. I think I said to you the last time we spoke, you get handed to a stranger, and after going through it, it's just so thorough. It's uncomplicated, very clear. So whoever, and it, like you said at the beginning, sir, it's a team of people that put that together. But I'm so appreciative when it comes across my desk because I don't have to have a PhD in anything to take a look at it. A few attaboy things that you hadn't mentioned, but I think it's worthy of mentioning because it really jumped out in your package to us. Your separate package was how hard you work on grants. I mean, when you sit there and see $500,000 and then you line item everything, I mean, that's money that has to be chased. And there's so many counties that miss out on opportunities. And, I know from working in other, jobs, it takes a lot to go after. A lot of times people don't go after the grant money because it's like, oh, we had to turn in something this thick to maybe get $10,000. You know, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, as I always say. Well, you're squeezing the juice because that was really impressive on grants. So, you know, hats off to you on that as well. The last two things I just wanted to mention is I like how you always invest in IT. And like you said, I don't really want to get into it unless asked. I just wanted to have you hit some of the high points of the investment that you continue to make in IT. What are some of the new things that are coming into the county without doing too deep of a dive? But like you say, you know, we're here to, you know, to inform the public because you're really working hard to keeping the sheriff's office on at the leading edge when it comes to technology. Share with us a couple of things of where that investment that you continue to make every year is going to go for this budget.
Yeah, thanks for that question. You know, we always try to be on the leading edge of anything law enforcement and public safety related. Certainly technology is one of them. The most recent technology advancements are in our real-time operations center. And that is an adjunct to the 911 center, where as a call comes in, they are listening to the call. We have analysts that start to evaluate the call. They bring up cameras like traffic cameras if it's in an area of an event. We are one of 6 agencies in the country that have been authorized by the FAA to fly drones without line of sight up to 3 miles. That is a pilot program right now. We've used that several times now, where call comes in of a crime in progress. This first one happened to be a burglary. We sent the drone out while they're still getting information on the event. The drone finds the location, sets up on top of it, videos to the operations center. Operations center feeds all that to the deputies and pinpointed the subject, the burglar, moving between houses, hiding in certain places, until finally he just threw his hands up and stood in the middle of the road and said, "I can't outrun a drone." So
Are you adding more drones to your inventory for the upcoming year or two? Is that something you're projecting?
we are. We use them in the way that we're allowed in the field. Our supervisors have them. We can have a drone up and feed information at the point they get to a lost person or other type of emergency. But the telemetry between aircraft and drones has to advance before we can go any further with our pilot program. But we'll wait, but we are ready to do it. And you know, all this reduces response time, gives more information to the responding deputy, and has more successful outcomes. So, and there are many other things, communications technology, digital technologies. We're using AI for the right reasons. Again, to catch those few criminals that choose Collier County, they should have chosen another county.
Just from a personal view, so I do a lot of work with Warrior Homes for Collier County, Dale Mullen, and once a year we go out into the woods to try to find homeless veterans or just citizens and give them a helping hand and point them in the right direction. I saw you have smaller drones that instead of us trudging through the woods, the sheriff that I was teamed with said, "Oh, we don't actually have to go out in the woods. We're going to fly a drone and save us some time, because if we don't see anybody out there, then we can move on to the next stop." So we quadrupled our efficiency from this tiny little drone being able to fly out to an area where commonly there were homeless people, but maybe not always. And then when we didn't see anybody, then we didn't have the need to spend the next 40 minutes to go through the brambles and whatnot. So it was a big help. Lastly, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about retention and recruitment. You come to the Board of County Commissioner meetings, graciously and give us a deep dive all the time as to how things are going. So I don't think any of us ever feel like we don't have a good handle on what the sheriff's office is doing. What's still your concern or the temperature in the water? Lastly, when it comes to retention and recruitment, I know it's got to always be high on your list. Where is it now, and is there something we can do to help you with that?
It's very high on our list. It has been for some time. Unfortunately, there are some places in the country that do not support their law enforcement. New people do not want to become involved in law enforcement. We're very fortunate in that we use that as a recruitment tool, that we have a community that supports professional law enforcement here and allows us to do our job. So yes, it's an ongoing chore to recruit and retain people. Cost of housing, cost of living overall. And the biggest thing is that we just need to remain competitive with other law enforcement agencies surrounding us, with other sheriff's offices surrounding us. We have remained competitive, but I would say this, at a point where everyone's new budgets across the state come into play, I'm going to make sure that we remain competitive, and if I need to come back and make a request for us to remain competitive, I would like to do that.
Sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple questions. I was going to tag on a little bit about the recruitment, because I noticed you're down about 200 positions. And the question was, is that an issue of starting salaries, or is there something that we can do to assist you in reducing that number of open spaces?
No, that is a quandary that I've had since I came from the city of Naples. The way that we submit to you with our budget, historically I've been told we always have to attach numbers to that. Those numbers don't actually equal the number of funded positions that we have in the budget. So there's another line item there that shows the number of funded positions versus vacant. We are pretty typical. We run about 20 positions throughout a year because of retirements, because of turnover. But we're, just to make sure the community doesn't know, we're not down 200 positions. We have worked through and taken over a lot of those responsibilities, but you'll also see that we're increasing the funding for the request each year. So with the budget we've presented, we will be looking at probably a total of, with the vacancies we currently have today and that which we would be authorized October, about 30 positions.
Obviously, this board has always prioritized public safety.
Yes.
And made sure that you've always had the resources that you need. And your increase is about $20 million, I believe, is the overall increase. And this is kind of a question for the manager as well as for you. It looks like we're moving towards the rollback millage rate. That generates about $12 or $13 million in, I think, new revenue. And I want to make sure that we understand that new revenue plus some would go to the sheriff's department. There won't be a whole lot left over for other county programs, and I just want to make sure that we fully understand that, because this budget's based on a rollback millage rate budget, which is, I think, the right way to go based on what we've been told. But I just want to make sure that we're careful about doing that, which leads me to a question concerning the radio system that we need to replace, because I don't know how that's incorporated in here at this point, and what the timing is. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit as to the timing of when we're going to need to pony up for the new radio system and what you think that may cost us?
A couple of things. You know, based upon my certification of need to you, I'm not looking to where the funding that you're going to use comes from. I mean, obviously I know it because I've come up through the system in the city and the county, but I think that's more a question for the manager. The radio system, which is a responsibility of the county, but we participate very closely. We have a great working relationship with them. We've been trying to make enhancements together with them, looking at the system, making sure that we have 95% coverage throughout the county. They have looked at different ways in which they can accomplish that. I think the dilemma is we are getting on in age with the 800 system. And with technology, as you all know, over the, about probably 20 years that the system's been in place, technology today is dramatically different than it was at that time. But I would refer to the manager for some of the dollars and how that would be done. Believe me, if we thought we were in critical need for this, we would have been working together with the manager right away. She's very attentive and her staff is very attentive. And then we would come to you and make that recommendation. Do I think we need to have a plan to refurbish or replace the system? Yes. And before we get to that point that it becomes a problem.
I want to, again, reiterate the priority of this board has always been public safety. I want to congratulate you and your efforts to make Collier County the safest place, really one of the safest places in the country to live. So that's kudos to you and to all the men and women in your agency. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you, Sheriff, for the job you're doing, and especially the men and women that work alongside you every day out there to provide this umbrella of safety that we all live in. I just want to piggyback a little bit on the retention issue. Do you see, or maybe somebody else can answer this, do you see a specific, let's say, time and grade or rank area, or where when we do see an attrition or a turnover of people coming, getting trained, and then working for a certain amount of time, and then just kind of belling out, and after we spend the money to get them trained up with some of the best equipment, best things available, or we have a pattern, or do we know where?
I don't know that we have so much a pattern. We'll ask the chief in a second because he supervises HR. But what we find typically is we have an agency of a lot of new people, 5 to 10 year people, and then we have a lot of senior people. Because when we went through the economic downturn for 10 years, we were not adding new people. So our concern is we've got senior people with expertise who are retiring, just retiring out at the end of drop, or because they've met their 30-year opportunity to do that. The other side is we're not seeing the length of commitment for career, I think, that we've seen historically in law enforcement. There's a lot more flexibility in, I want to do this for 10 years, I want to go do something else. But again, we're facing immediately, everybody wants to come, not everybody. We have a lot of people that want to come here to work and live till they find out how much it costs to live, and they can't find a house, and they're right out. So before we even get them into the system, we lose them. Those who are, that do hire, we do a lot of recruitment locally. We have a great program with the Immokalee Foundation, which we have connected with, to bring in people to be trained as dispatchers. We're looking at people with connections that have the ability for housing here. So I'm not sure that there's any one thing, but a variety of things. And certainly, as I mentioned before, your support, the support of the community, has a lot to do with why people would want to become involved in law enforcement here, as opposed to other communities. But it goes right back to, if we do not remain competitive, as I watch other organizations, to your point specifically, we need to recognize and thank the deputies that have worked here, that have made all these goals to be accomplished, and to hold them. Because the hard part, becoming number one, it's not easy, but when you get there, you want to keep it. And I think that is our next challenge, and competitive everything is something we need to look at, but in a very fiscally responsible way.
Thank you, Sheriff.
And this is for you, Chief. I actually have a letter here from Donna McGinnis with regard, we met out at the rifle range or the gun range a couple months ago. And with the housing affordability issue, there's a lot of people that moved in just to the west of the gun range and then went, oh, there's a gun range over there. So, and we're having a lot of issues. But I have a letter here from the garden with regard to the plantings for the sound barrier there, and they're going to supply the plants to us for free. So the irrigation installation and things will be on us. So squirrel a little bit of money away over in here. Get with Ed Finn. You and I, when we spoke, that we would collaborate together to ensure that sound barrier is in fact planted. And on that same note, how are the conversations going with the potential relocation and an indoor facility with regard to our gun range?
Thank you, Commissioner. For the record, Greg Smith, Chief of Administration for the Sheriff's Office. First, let me say that planting the berm and doing those other things that might be necessary to make enhancements to the current range, that sounds like an excellent opportunity for inmate labor to assist with the county in getting a lot of that stuff done at a minimal cost.
Amen.
So I think that we can go in that direction. We're having ongoing discussions with the county manager, Mr. Finn and their staffs to source some real estate somewhere that we might be able along the way to move that range. Certainly everyone understands the need is there. And they're not making any more land in Collier County, so we need to find a parcel pretty quickly. One of the things that you'll have presented to you today is an acquisition on the sheriff's behalf for a District 5 substation. So they are starting to act on the needs of the sheriff with that regard. But I do think that the range is one that's a priority moving forward with the increased populations.
Outstanding. Very good.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you, sir. Inmate labor.
All right, Commissioners, that brings us to the Supervisor of Elections.
Page 8 in the Constitution.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners.
somebody put
For
some
the record, my name is Melissa Blazier. I'm your Collier County Supervisor of Elections. This morning, our fiscal year 2025 budget request comes in at $5.5 million, which is a 9.8% decrease from our current budget. And that's primarily due to the fact that we are currently conducting 2 countywide elections, so the March presidential preference primary and the upcoming primary election. And then in this budget request, we are only funding 1 countywide election, and that is the November general election. In addition to that request, we have requested an additional $1.5 million in 301 funding, and that is for voting equipment and voting system upgrades that would take place in fiscal year 2025 after the general election, but before the 2026 election cycle. And with that, that concludes my comments. Any questions? It's a small budget request.
We're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ma'am?
Thank you. All right, and that brings us to the Clerk of Courts.
Ooh, here come the suits.
Oh, geez.
Oh, that's fine. I don't know about that. Thank you. Good morning. It's hard to believe it's already another budget cycle, but here we are. So good morning, Commissioners. I have with me Derek Johnson, our Finance Director, Mike Smykowski, our Director of Administration, and Mike Nettie, who's our Director of Recording and Accounting. And all of these counterparts with the math and budget expertise work to bring our programs to completion. I do want to thank first, it's kind of interesting wrapping up the constitutionals because they took all my thunder. But remember, the clerk's office is integrated with all of them. We do all of the assets, we do all the financial reporting. We work with each and every one of the people that spoke previously, whether it's the courts, the state's attorney, and the sheriff, and Melissa and supervisor of elections. So we are very integrated to all of the operations. So we want to thank the board, the county manager and staff, and of course I want to thank the great staff at the clerk's office who support us every day and give great customer service to our constituents. Our 2025 budget request meets all the guidelines as you prescribed. Our budget is less than 1% of the county's budget at 0.75%. We participated in the Resource X program for budget responsiveness, and that implementation is reflected in the documents that you've received through the budget office. We meet all of the policy guidelines. We participate in the board's insurance for employees, payroll plan, and follow pretty much the guidance that you give to the staff for the county. I would like to mention a couple of recent successes that we have on our books. Automation, that seems to be the word that you're hearing from everyone, and it has to continue. We have automated everything from our records and information to the first 100 years. All of the recording documents for Collier County are now automated and online for property and real records. That goes back to the late 1800s, so we're pretty proud of that. Also in the recording department, I'll brag a little bit more about them. For any of you interested, you can now be married online or get your marriage license online. So we offer a lot of these services now, including a mobile app for recording. We found that with our contractors, this meets a significant need in the community. And so we are trying to continue to upgrade and update so that it provides convenient service and also streamlines what we do so that we're able to do more with the same individual staffing that we have right now. Our budget, we did reduce it by 1 FTE, going in the right direction, but with all of the increases in population and activity, we were only able to reduce by 1 staff. The other major project that I want to bring to your attention, because the clerk of courts often is the back room component of what we do. We operate and manage the financial systems for the clerk, the supervisor of elections, and the Board of County Commissioners. So we had a major upgrade this year with the incredible cooperation of county staff. The supervisor of elections will be going on with some of these things. We upgraded your platform. You've heard how important it is to upgrade mobile data, upgrade mobile radios, upgrade these systems to make sure that you're on a platform that is sustainable in the current environment. Cybersecurity, obviously incredibly important. So we maintain all of those systems, but we specifically upgraded our SAP financial system at the latter part of last year to the latest platform. That enabled us this year to implement a more significant change in the time and attendance programs and technology that we have. This will not only add more transparency, but it will give us the ability to better track our labor, associate it with more projects, get a better handle on the total cost of everything that we do. And we've had great cooperation with all of the county departments. The clerk is the first guinea pig, so we will have that completed in the next couple months with all of our payroll and backup information, and then we will start implementing what we've been working on for the board side this year. Those are really the largest things that we've done. I don't want to belabor it. We do provide the board our budget book on May 1 of each year with the details, and this is available to the public if they have any questions. And it includes information about each and every one of our departments and our services. And with that, we'll just look for any questions you might have.
Questions? Carry on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And I appreciate the board's continued support as we work through a lot of projects. It's been a great difference in working with the county manager and the commissioners in the past couple of years. So I look forward to continuing that.
All right, I don't believe we have the property appraiser, the tax collector, so we'll move on to public safety.
Troy, did you have any speakers for the constitutional officers?
I do not.
All right. We can move on to public safety, but we're up on a court reporter break as well.
All right. You want to take a break now?
If you believe we're going to have a longer conversation, maybe that would be best, and then we can go to public safety.
Go ahead and break. We'll be back at 10:30.
Chair, you have a live mic.
All right, Chief Schultz, bring it to us.
Good morning, Commissioners. Michael Choate, your Executive Director of Public Safety. It's an honor to be here this morning. You know, the thing I love about public workshops is this is a planning tool as we describe our budget, and it gives us the opportunity to actually include you in our plan and to seek your input and to field your questions and so forth. So as your Public Safety Director, I am charged with managing 5 internal district or slash areas and division slash areas. Those include emergency management, emergency medical services. That includes our telecommunications area. That also includes a dependent fire district, which you have an MSTU for the Ochopee Fire District and an MSTU for the Goodland Fire District. And I'm also responsible for $94.8 million of public safety funds, and I do not take that lightly. So with that, I have surrounded myself with competent division directors, which therefore makes my job easier. We've been faced with a lot of challenges over the last since I was brought on as your public safety director. We've had turnover rates. We've had recruitment and retention issues. We've had 2 collective bargaining sessions where we've successfully been able to close 2 contracts within our EMS groups. And so we've had a lot of changes. I heard a term yesterday that public safety, and Mr. Barnwell actually said it in a meeting yesterday, that public safety was actually that aircraft carrier, and it took a long time to get us turned around, and I think we are turned around now and we're headed in a different direction. So questions, Commissioners? We can start with emergency management, EMS.
You're driving the bus.
Okay, all right, emergency management, Director Summers.
For the record, good morning, Dan Summers, your Director of Emergency Management for Collier County. And as you know, we continue to be responsible for your disaster preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. Our team has worked incredibly hard. We're still in recovery, if you will, and lessons learned from both Hurricane Ian and Hurricane Irma. I think we've had an incredibly successful period. We've almost completed that East Bay renovation for our logistics supply warehouse. We do have a temporary certificate of occupancy. We're still waiting on the builder to punch list that facility, and we're going to start our soft move on Monday to get that logistics staging area in tip-top shape in order to get the first push of commodities to our community in the disaster. And I just want to thank you, and I want to thank the Surtax Committee. I think you're going to see that this is going to be a best practice. There are many, many communities that would just roll over to have an opportunity to have a staging area in order to be efficient in disaster response and save money by gaining commodity and using grant during blue sky periods as opposed to gray sky. So we're very excited. We feel a little bit behind the curve on timelines. But my staff has committed weekends and evenings to get that warehouse facility up and operational. So that's next on our list. We've continued to work across the board on standby contracting. You know, when you're a disaster survivor, not only as a government public safety worker, you are not able to run at complete efficiency. And with our partners at Florida Division of Emergency Management, who also have a host of standby contracts now, certainly working with our state and federal partners, I feel very good about the readiness posture going into this season. The sheriff mentioned his engagement with volunteers, and we have done likewise with our volunteer agency coordinator, who is now working under the financial support of the Community Foundation of Collier County, formally setting up a business unit called a Volunteer Organizations Assisting in Disaster. With close to 300 nonprofit agencies in Collier County, to be able to gather that group, put a business process together, leverage the horsepower of volunteer agencies, non-governmental organizations, and churches. We're going to bring that fold into the efficiency of the EOC mission tasking. That has been a tremendous partnership with emergency management and the Community Foundation of Collier County. Continuity of operations is big to me. We continue to work with what we call our emergency support functions, our different agencies, to make sure that we've got staff depth in the EOC, we've got contract depth, we have resource identification within the EOC operations, and I think that continues to go well. We're paying very close attention to our shelter space. We're paying very close attention to our frail and elderly to make sure that they get what we refer to as the lifeboat, not the love boat, but the lifeboat of services during gray sky events. And we work very carefully on that registry, and we have a good team that will kind of do what I refer to disaster casework on steroids during times of EOC activation. And finally, just understand that our threats change all the time. You know, we are spending more and more time on mass violence planning, mass casualty planning, obviously our natural hazards planning, our engagement with nuclear power plant planning over in Miami, and then of course anything associated with terrorism. We have some dotted lines, if you will, in cyber terrorism, and also continuing to look at anything else that might be a national threat. Our partnership and the horsepower at the Florida Division of Emergency Management is quite good. Our governor has supported emergency management in ways that I have not seen before in my 42-year career in emergency management. And our team and our interagency cooperation, our mutual aid engagement with surrounding partner agencies are good. And lastly, I have to thank the community. I have to thank the county employees, the municipal employees. One message, one effort, one team, and I feel very confident that you know, we'll do the best that we can and do a pretty good job with whatever Mother Nature throws at us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Also, moving on to EMS, commissioners, you know, Commissioner
Hang on
Saunders.
1 second.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Chief, I just wanted to ask Stan a couple questions. First, thanks for what you do. You know, even before I was a commissioner, you know, working with you when I was at Physicians Regional, you know, you were just top notch. You know, literally, we always say no one's irreplaceable. You know, when it comes time for you to go fishing and play golf and not do this 25-hour-a-day job that you do, you'll be tough to replace. But a couple quick questions. During Ian, when we were all, you know, coming and going in the EOC and, you know, watching just an incredible operation and your team being incredibly responsive. One thing that, and we talked about it, this wasn't any big secret, there were a few little holes there. You know, it was disappointing to see a desk with the name of a very important agency and have them be missing in action. And then right next to them, so I won't throw anybody under the bus that was missing, but then right next to them you have LCEC, and they're there 24/7. It's a decision maker, so it's not somebody that just had a phone book. It was somebody that we could get rapid response from, and it just seemed like there's a few agencies that didn't realize that by them having their cubicle empty, or some of the cubicles that had somebody in there, but it was of no value, because we'd go to them with a problem. They'd say, "Oh, I don't know. Let me call," and you know, I would say, "Oh, I already called that number and left 3 messages." So as we prepare for this hurricane season, you know, and this isn't being directive. This is just, you know, just brainstorming. You know, something from you out to the community, to those key leaders who were present, saying thank you, we look forward to seeing you again, but also to some of those agencies saying, you know, we had a chair for you, and it was cold the entire time, and it would have been very helpful if somebody there that could have been a conduit to either, you know, a medical facility or, you know, some other agency, because you do an awesome job setting up that command center, but if they don't, you know, man the station, and it was obvious, the ones that were missing, because it was so obvious how helpful the ones were that were there and how they made our jobs easier. I mean, the minute I got a call that there was something traumatic happening in the way of, you know, I just use LCAC as an example, it was great to then be able to look at their key leader, and when she sometimes she'd say, I just got a call about it, we're on it, or she'd say, I hadn't heard that, thank you for passing that, I'm on it, to see how quickly we were able to respond to things. But, if that person wasn't in the seat, we sort of were moving in slow motion. What's your thoughts on that? And is there anything we can do this year to maybe get a few more butts in the seats in some of those key, cubicles where they were kind of missing in action? And some of those empty cubicles were really key, partners in time of emergency.
Yes, sir, and thank you for that observation, and you're 100% spot on. As you know, I make sure that our house is welcoming. We offer training and engagement. Some of those agencies are on our mailing list for invites and engagements every day, including personal phone calls to come and participate. We do have a couple of private agencies in town that think that they can work in a silo or can work successfully in a disaster remotely. A hurricane is not a disaster environment that you can work virtually. As you explained, that interaction one-on-one interaction is important for mission success. I think maybe we could have a conversation, and some of those agencies, maybe an invite by the board would encourage their participation and to get, as you said, decision makers in that room. And
I like that idea.
I think an invitation, because even to engage, we've seen reluctance to even engage in MOUs or other activities where, let's say, we need to place a special needs client due to medical frailty, and we continue to see some reluctance, even though we offer to pay. Or offer to reimburse that entity. So maybe an invite from you all to strengthen that partnership. And I think there are just one or two that you and I know are not engaging the way we'd like them to. Maybe an invite would nudge that along.
Yeah, maybe that's something you could work with the county manager, and then it comes from either her or our chairman or whatever. And like you said, it's not a pile of 50 letters. It's a couple, and maybe even some thank you letters. I mean, I'm going to throw a shout out. Trisha Dorn from LCEC. I mean, that lady was a rock star during Ian, and there were others, but I just mean, it was like, wow, we need 10 other people in these other seats, and it's actually, like you said, less than 10. But if she wouldn't have been there, I mean, she was taking care of stuff at light speed, and also she was a decision maker. She was a senior person in that, and it made all the difference in the world. She wasn't there just answering the phone, telling us what we already knew. And in the other seats, Matt Holliday from NCH. I mean, you could tell that guy was sleeping in the EOC because he had a 5 o'clock, a 10 o'clock, and a 12 o'clock shadow, and it was like he never went home. But it was so comforting to know that if we had something major, that we didn't have to hunt down somebody from NCH. I mean, he was there 24/7 basically, and that was so helpful. So as you were saying, anything we can do to assist those one or two agencies, and then also some thank yous to make sure that the ones that did it great do it again, because like you said, there was a few that were trying to dial it in remotely, and it was like, well, I mean, I can do that. We need something more robust. So, yeah, that sounds like a great idea to suggest, and it maybe it's 2 letters. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you again if in the unlikely event we have an emergency, but we might. And like you said, hurricane's quite a bit different.
And we work, just to understand too, excuse me, that we're engaged with these partners 365 days a year. Wildfire events, other severe weather events. So, people like Trish, as an example, they know they're part of our team, we're part of their team, and that partnership and that discussion goes on year round.
And then lastly, and this could have been a question for the sheriff as well, but I sort of know his answer. But when it comes to active shooter, we see so many, tragedies all over the country. If we, God forbid, had some sort of incident here, the EOC would be a big part of response. I just wanted to sort of set the table for you because I know you're already doing some things, but just give us a short version on what you're doing in that area to be prepared, should that unfortunate incident ever happen in the county. Because I know we are prepared, but I wanted to give you a...
Well, thank you. And as a old-timer EMSer too, I take that patient concern seriously. We have done numerous, first of all, using FEMA and DHS assets, we've put on several campus emergency classes just to help teach school folks and private schools how to engage in that incident management. That's part of it. It's understanding the business process that you need to turn on just like that to manage an incident. Second, we're partnering with the school districts, private schools, the sheriff. We continue to work together on what we call reunification. It's a very much a crisis situation when parents are unnerved, kids don't have that information. There's this gigantic, there's this period in that fast-breaking event that does take some skill set to organize and put together because we're all very concerned about our children. The third component that we have done is that in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I hope to take delivery on our second mass casualty ambulance bus. And that was a partnership with Collier Area Transit, a grant opportunity with the Healthcare Coalition. We took a CAT bus, refurbed it. Prison Enterprises in Daytona has done a phenomenal job. We'll be taking delivery of that in a couple of weeks. And so now we'll have 2 of these vehicles for mass casualty transport. We also use them for firefighter rehab during major fire events, and it also provides a safe place or a cool down location even for a localized evacuation. So building that capability, which right now we continue to be the only folks in Region 6 with the exception of Okeechobee County that has that type of capability. And we have done that literally for the cost of a radio.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, and I appreciate the support.
Commissioner LeCastro, I just want to touch back on your comment. You made a perfect point in terms of the decision maker. You said that should be in the seats in our EOC when we're activated. And I think we've closed some of those gaps since Ian. I think Director Summers would agree with that. And further, I would say that some of that was an educational piece. I can speak only to the emergency services aspect of that in terms of the fire chiefs and the sheriff's office, both local police departments, et cetera. And I can tell you that it's important to have, that's the whole point of the ESF program, the emergency services function, right, or the emergency support function, rather, in the EOC, and so that the decision maker's there, because when we need something immediately, when something comes to the attention of the director, when we're under activation, and we need that entity to make a decision, we don't need them to get on the phone. We don't need them to have to call their boss and say, we need, can we? And so I think we've done a good job of that red carpet, so to speak. Right. And hey, come join us, come be part of the team. And I think let's hope we don't have to use it, right? Yeah. But I think should we activate again for whatever reason, natural or man-made, I would like to say that I think you'll see a little different stuff.
I think the wording of any letter, if it went out to key agencies, and like you say, in some it might need to be a phone call, is really critical, because we're not asking them to come into the EOC and man their seat, because that's when they send any Tom, Dick, or Harry. Yes, it's like, no, we need a senior leader from your organization to be part of the senior leadership team that the county has put together during time of extreme, incident. And so, there was even a couple of seats that did have somebody in it, but it was manned. It wasn't really covered, with a person like, Tricia or, Matt Holliday are 2 perfect examples of people that weren't manning anything. They were ingrained in your team, and it was so obvious and so helpful. So,
and quickly, I just want to mention to the commission, I take this EOC activation very seriously and my team knows that my job is to be ready for a fast-breaking event. Yes, we have days to spool up an EOC for a hurricane. That EOC is ready 24/7, 365, and the only thing left to do is turn the coffee pot on, and that's it. And so, we have the ability to recall staff quickly. The faster that group can engage, the faster we can support our responders on the street, and we can support those that are impacted by the event.
I have a question about your budget, not operations. You're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you, sir.
This budget is a huge increase.
Yes, sir.
And so, in going through, when I say huge, public safety is imperative for our community. I'm not disavowing the necessity, but There's close to a $20 million increase year over year in this, well, what I'm seeing, it might be more, but I'm saying 20 for today. I would like a little bit of discussion with regard to how we arrived at that. And is there, because I saw there were large increases for reserves for capital, reserves for contingency, reserves for cash flow, increases. And so I'd like to know, were we direly deficient in our previous budget analysis and estimations and how we were doing what we were doing? And then as a part of that, in my review, most of the budgets of all of the departments that you have breakdowns, personnel costs, this and that and the other. The medical examiner was like 2.4 million. Give me that. And it's up from 2.4 to 2.6 million, and there was no breakdown on that. Is there a reason? And let's talk about the medical examiner first, and then we'll go back to the big question.
Yes, sir. She's doing some upgrades there. She's in dire straits with her facility. So she's in the middle of some upgrades, things like coolers, adding to for more capability and more capacity and those types of things. That is the bulk of that, if not all, of the increases that you'll see there in her budget.
And her toxicology cost, by the way. So, as we see more drug-related deaths, I might add,
Certainly.
then her toxicology studies go up by volume. And
I saw
that's
that.
a very rare labor market, too. So not many folks in that field.
I saw the breakdown in the write-up over here, but in the line item amount, it was an aggregate amount, 2.2 million for operating, and no breakdown as to where it was divided up. In our other budgets, it is divided up. So now you can talk about the
EMS.
A portion of it's EMS. I mean, emergency management was up close to $1 million, and fire districts are up a minute. So talk to me.
Yes, sir. So starting with EMS, we've had a host of challenges, as I alluded to earlier in an opening statement, and some of those challenges include turnover. Some of those challenges include a restructuring or reorganization, and some of those challenges the bulk of that challenge has been recruitment of qualified personnel, and then the retention of the qualified personnel. And there's been a host of problems for that. Some of it is not unique to Collier County. Some of that is nationwide shortages in terms of paramedics. But we need to remain competitive. You heard the sheriff just stand at the same platform and give you that speech, and we need to remain competitive. And so through the collective bargaining process, we were able to do some of that. We were able to increase our salaries and do some things like paying for experience and those types of things that graciously this board has adopted and ratified in contract for our collective bargaining units. But I'll tell you, there's still work to be done. We have successfully been filling positions. We have pushed out open until filled, and HR is pulling in groups. Right now, I'm happy to say that our training staff is inundated with Paramedic Academy, trying to get folks credentialed to turn loose in the street. I'm happy to tell you that every single field training officer that we have has a student, a new hire with them today. And so things are, that my battleship analogy where we are slowly turning things around. But that comes at a cost, Commissioner, as you're well aware. The additional folks that we're bringing on. This board approved 2 growth units several years ago. And that was just post-COVID, you approved 2 growth units with EMS. And that predates me. That's BC, as I say. That's before Choate. Once I got here and we started doing our deep dive into analysis, and we started breaking everything down, and we started, why are we short? Why are we not successful here? What's going on? And we figured out those very things, that it's a recruitment issue. Now, I'm happy to say that the state is starting to get more and more applicants. There's the academies are pumping out paramedic students, are pumping out certified paramedics. And so, but we're all behind. And, you know, COVID came also with, in the pre-hospital world, COVID came also with, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, right? There were tenured employees. We lost a plethora of employees who day-to-day operations are here to run those calls. They're here and they're willing and they're very competent and able to take care of you. However, COVID was a whole different ball game for all of us. And we found some paramedics that were just the burnout. And as people would leave us, or we would have those that were sick, that were off work, and our employees would have to work double and triple time and quadruple time, that burnout took place and folks would leave us. And we found ourselves, I got here and I inherited a mess. Let's just be honest. We were short. We were understaffed.
How many people you got empty in the boxes right now?
So we are happily, I can tell you that we are caught up to what you've previously approved with the 2 growth units. We have filled those spots, waiting to push them out into the field. They're all in training or either with a field training officer waiting to be credentialed by the medical director. And we are still asking, as you see in the budget, we're asking for 9 additional FTEs, which equals 1 growth unit. Our metric says 9 for 1 unit. And so, and that's simply explained, obviously there's 2, it's a 2-person unit, so it's 2, 4, 6 with the 3 shifts plus 1, 2, 3 for, we're moving to that model so that we can eventually, as we staff up fully, have what we're going to consider float positions, which will absolutely reduce our overtime if we have a float position on each shift and they really, based upon vacation times and call outs, et cetera, and they'll get that notification 6:30 a.m. Hey, report to station so and so today because there's a hole. Report to station so and so today. There's a hole.
Answer my question. No. How many people short are you right now, plus minus?
Chief Gastineau, are we full?
Correct. Well,
Amy, didn't we approve 25 FTEs the last time
Yes.
we changed, right? It was 25.
Commissioners, let me help. So a couple of years ago, we came to you with what we believe to be a staffing plan. Now understand that this is more art than science. I can't say, because they've been so short-staffed that the methodology that we used to come up with that planning number involved going back to a point in time when we were fully staffed and then projecting forward the growth and the growth units that should have been and the people that should have been infused into the system to come to a number that we were going to plan to, knowing that that number was around 72 positions short. However, we couldn't hire 72 people. You weren't going to give us 72 people. You shouldn't. And we didn't know as we started to add people how the system was going to respond. So we've used that 72 as a planning number. So to get to your question, Commissioner McDaniel, you gave us 24 positions, which has taken us over 2 years to fill. They're just at that point now where we're going to ask for another round, and this is what we had agreed to, is that we would continue to come and ask in small bites as we add people to the system. So if you take, you're going to make me do math in my head, take 72 minus 24 is what, Ed? Is 48. If we're asking for another 9, that gets us to 39. So let's call it we're plus or minus 40 people short. Now that again is a planning number, and we're going to continue to understand this and ask for FTEs as we can hire them. It is a much better situation than it has been for the last couple of years. As Chief Choate alluded to, we have, generally speaking, enough people to fill the seats, and we're not, generally speaking, telling people that they can't go home because we have people willing to work the overtime, but we aren't in this mandation situation, which is a very dangerous situation to be in, but we are not fully staffed. So I just have to caution you, while we may say all of the allocated positions are full, fully staffed is a number that we're still targeting at somewhere between 0 and 40.
So thank you for that answer.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes.
You can thank her later for answering
I plan to,
the question.
sir. Certainly.
Okay. He sat next to me last night at a public hearing in Ave Maria, so the conversation.
We were up late, sir.
Yeah, we were. Talk to me about the reserve contingencies for capital, for catastrophic events, so on and so forth. And what are those appropriations? Uh-oh, here comes Chris.
All right, I'll answer this.
And are these, and while I have you there, are these blended in with the 301 that we already have established for all of the county assets that are out in the realm?
Those are not. Those are separate reserves.
301 is a separate reserve.
Correct. So the reason you're seeing the reserve increase there is as Chief and Amy have spoke about the attrition savings in that fund. We've been putting in the reserve for future capital purchases. I'll let Bruce speak to this or Chief in a minute, but they do have a large capital need coming up moving forward. If you look at the net cost there to the general fund on that page with the revenue and the transfers are compliant transfers. It's just the money that's been floating through that plan to be used on the capital expenditures. In addition, you're looking at the main page, I'm assuming, so you see the reserve for catastrophe. That is a number that used to be in Dan's shop that now we're pushing over to our 1813 reserve, which is our FEMA fund. And that's money that'll be set aside for initial response to disaster.
So it's not new money, Chris?
It's not new money, no. It's money that's in the system.
It's your fund accounting methodology that squirrels me all the time.
Essentially the carry forward being reappropriated in a reserve to be utilized at a future date. If that
helps.
Simplifies it a little, so.
We don't like fund accounting, just for the record. Have that on the record.
Fund accounting.
Well, this Aggie's lost. I need to catch up. So I'm looking at a $25 million increase, and I'm not really sure what's real money and what's extra money, or what's transferred money, or what's shifted money. So tell me bottom line, what's required from the taxpayers from this year's budget to last year's budget?
Chris will help you.
Will do. So I'm on page number
4.
It's going to be page number 5 here, which will show
I was on 4.
your revenues.
We were still on 4 trying to figure out what you wrote there.
All the answers are on 5.
Oh, okay. Go to page 5.
That's why if it. I mean, we can do that. Let's do that. So turn back to page 1A if you don't mind.
1A.
1A. So on this page, you'll see the. Do I want to put this on the overhead?
I don't think anybody can see it.
The writing just got smaller.
Yeah.
Yes. I have new eyes, so I can see it just
Hiding.
fine.
That's how you can tell we're dealing with something important.
They're hiding stuff on there.
If you don't mind, so that I can read it.
Oh, goodness sakes.
Here. Give me a second. Okay. So on the top here, you're going to see your general fund compliance page. Looking at the whole department there, you're going to see the general fund net cost is in last year's budget was $31.6 million. I'm looking at the first section, the bottom. 31.6, that's your emergency management, 800 megahertz, EMS, and Ochapi fire control added together for last year. This year, the budgeted transfers and net costs total $32.6 million. It's a $1 million increase, and which equates to 3.2%.
Okay.
So they're compliant.
Ding.
And then if you go down to the other section, that's the 111 portion of that. The only one who's in there is the Division of Forestry and Ochapi. So again, it's money that's flowing through the system. We earmark it. We put it in the reserve for capital. Talking with the chiefs for they will be having future needs for replacement capital, and of course Dan's group as well, and Nate's with the radio maintenance. So
when all the smoke settles, it's within budget policy?
correct, it is.
Okay. All I need to know. I was panicking at 35% increase.
One of these days, we're going to move you over to a cash basis and see how you act.
It may be a little different.
Yeah. All right, let's hear from you. Let's hear from Mr. Gastineau, because he's been dutifully sitting there waiting to talk, and we haven't got to him yet.
That's fine. Good morning, Commissioners. Bruce Gastineau, Chief of Collier County EMS. I'm fine just sitting here listening to I'm not as long-winded as my cohort next to me, Mr. Summers. As you know, Collier County is no longer a sleepy town. We continue to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our call volume has been increasing steadily every year. We're up almost 0.5% just from this year, from last year, from October 1. Our transports are up. And thank you with your support and your continued support. The biggest thing that we've been able to overcome is what Director Choate said, is our vacancies. And now we have a recruitment tool where we are paying for experience up to 5 years. So now we're attracting people, paramedics from other areas of the state of Florida or nationally registered from out of the state coming down here to apply, whereas we didn't have that recruitment tool in the past. That has been very beneficial to us.
And that's part of the revenue increases that are over in here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Dan, my colleagues call me long-winded all the time, but it's because we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to say, right? We have a lot of detail. It's not long-winded. It's detailed-oriented.
Commissioners, less more or no? No, not.
One correction I'll make as a military guy, it's not turn the battleship, it's turn the aircraft carrier.
Turn the aircraft
Battleship is easy to turn. Aircraft carrier, yeah.
In fact, I think I may have said
switched
aircraft carrier
boats.
first, and I think I went back to
Yeah,
went to
you
a
switched
different
boats.
analogy. I did. Yes. Now that you say that, I realize I did that.
Anybody got anything?
No, I'm good.
Oh, so all the good stuff was on 1A, hidden on page 1A. Okay.
And then on page 5.
5, yeah.
Small print.
Hey, you read the small print, right?
Benito?
Yep.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Troy, do we have any public comment on that group?
The only public comment I have registered at this point is for public services and then for growth management.
Okay.
I don't have anything else up until then.
Thank you. All right, moving on to corporate business operations.
Just turn to 1A.
Yeah. Everything's on 1A. This book could be a lot smaller if we just said 1A.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Ken Kovetsky, Executive Director of the Corporate Business Operations Department. This department is comprised of 4 internal service divisions: Human Resources, Information Technology, Procurement Services, and Risk Management. The department has 112 employees and a total budget of $150 million. The Human Resources Division provides a variety of services to county employees, including recruitment and retention, compensation, employee recognition, employee relations, performance management, development, and training. This division continues to undertake activities to align with the county's strategic plan, specifically related to the board's priority that recruitment and retention will position Collier County to be an employer of choice. This HR budget includes a request for 3 expanded positions. The current staffing level of 19 is not adequate to effectively support a county staff of 2,300 employees. The same number of HR employees supported between 300 and 400 fewer employees 15 years ago. An industry study conducted this year found that the average HR staff to employee ratio was 1.7 per 100 employees, which would translate here to 39 HR employees. We are looking to bolster support in the following areas. First, adding an applications analyst to support the continuous upgrades and enhancements that are being applied to SAP, which has been increasing in complexity and scope, requiring extensive training, maintenance, troubleshooting, and training. Second, adding a management analyst to the payroll function, overseeing timekeeping and the management of leave programs. Currently, this function is administered by only one FTE who processes payroll for over 2,000 employees every 2 weeks. And third, adding an HR business partner to handle increasing employee relations matters. This is another area lacking depth, with only one FTE supporting the entire county. Notwithstanding the requested expanded positions, this general fund budget meets budget guidance and includes a 1% decrease in operating expenses compared to FY24. The Information Technology Division provides efficient, reliable, and secure customer-oriented IT services, which includes the agency's data network, telephone system, software applications, and data. There are 2 county manager priorities in the strategic plan for the IT division: cybersecurity initiatives and an IT master plan. Cybersecurity efforts include creating the capacity to allow for more than 6 months of immutable backups online, adding and upgrading layers to the existing security infrastructure, implementing a security operations center, and continuing to work towards a zero-trust networking environment. Some components of the IT master plan include adding and replacing outdated fiber, upgrading equipment, applying software patches, installing next-generation firewalls, and moving to cloud applications where it is deemed a good fit. The overall IT budget is programmed to increase by 11.6%, primarily due to a $1.5 million investment in replacing old network storage devices that will increase capacity and speed. The Procurement Services Division ensures proper safeguards are in place to maintain a procurement system of quality and integrity that protects taxpayer money by promoting fiscal stewardship and sound budget oversight. Current initiatives that are supporting this mission include updating the procurement ordinance and procurement and purchasing card manuals, continuing to enhance the recently implemented cloud-based bidding platform, continuing the vendor outreach program to encourage vendor engagement, and improving strategic sourcing involving contract oversight and agency procurement support. This general fund budget meets budget guidance and is programmed to decrease by 3% compared to FY24. The Risk Management Division strives to continuously develop, manage, and improve the county's risk finance, group insurance, safety, and occupational health programs in order to provide quality, cost-effective support to our customers, to protect the county's financial interests against catastrophic loss, and to serve as a resource for the health, safety, and well-being of our employees. The budget in the Group Health and Life Insurance Fund is programmed to increase by 9.1% due to increasing payouts for health care claims. This budget includes a 7% increase to health insurance premiums for both employer and employee. This follows an increase of 5% last year that was recommended by the county's actuarial firm in what may be a multi-year effort to stabilize reserves. Operating expenses are budgeted to increase in the Property and Casualty Insurance Fund due to continued increases in reinsurance premiums, although we are seeing signs of rate stabilization. The overall budget across risk management's 3 funds is programmed to increase 7.2%. That concludes my remarks. I'm available for any questions, and my division directors are on standby as well.
Ken, what's the bottom line? Is there an increase in the budget or a decrease in the budget from last year?
Well, there's 4 different divisions.
Overall?
Overall, it will increase because of the IT costs.
And if I may, Commissioner, from a compliance standpoint, I can run through the page 1A if you'd like to.
I can see that.
Show you the overall.
So it's like the actual change was 13.7%, but it was over the 3.5% of the guidance. So therefore, it's like my wife went shopping and spent money and told me how much she saved. So I see that.
One of the considerations is that the workforce utilization pool is included in the HR budget. So that was a $3 million addition, but it's not really part of the HR budget. It's just where it's been housed.
Thank you.
And if I may, a couple of things that came out of our Resource X prioritization. Obviously, we discussed the workforce prioritization pool. Another one that Ken touched on is we're looking at our procurement ordinance and looking at the thresholds we have established there to try to see if we can look at other counties, states to provide more efficiencies by maybe making these more standard with the state and or other counties. So that's something. I'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Yeah, and this is a good foreshadowing to the report that we'll discuss towards the end of today's presentation. But Chris is absolutely right, both on a process standpoint and perspective for changing procurement thresholds to create program efficiencies, and as well, while our report tends to get less into specific processes, this was one key recommendation as organizations like the City of Austin, Texas, the City of Denver, Colorado. They are included in your report as specific case studies for these types of recommendations, as well as some opportunities to consider some centralized procurement up for consideration.
All right.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, that brings us on to transportation.
There we go.
Hold on to your money.
Yeah, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go.
Look at her 1A. Look at her 1A page. Wait, do you see your 1A page? It's huge. With very small print.
A lot of people in tow.
Good morning, Commissioners. Trinity Scott, Transportation Management Services Department Head. This department encompasses 6 divisions: capital project planning, inclusive of our stormwater management and coastal zone; fiscal and grant services; operations and performance management, which includes the county's 3 airports; public transit and neighborhood enhancement, who oversees municipal service taxing units and both the fixed route and paratransit systems; road, bridge, and stormwater maintenance; and transportation engineering and construction management. With me at the table today, I have Ellen Sheffy, who is our Director of Fiscal and Grant Services, and also in the room are several division directors. Transportation Management Services employs 310 full-time team members who dedicate their professional lives to optimize operations and efficiently plan our limited resource capacity to support the board's strategic plan as Ms. Patterson directs. Our funding sources are very diverse. They include tourist development taxes, ad valorem, grants, gas taxes, impact fees, fares, and infrastructure sales surtax. Our operating and capital budgets are $100 million and $174 million respectively. This year, we had the opportunity to work with Resource X team, during which we evaluated and prioritized our programs to ensure that each activity that's undertaken by this department supports the board's strategic plan. One of the themes with Resource X was to be future-focused, looking at opportunities to create revenue. Over the next year, the airports, public transit, and pollution control will be evaluating our various fee and rate structures, and will come back to the board with suggested modifications. Another key initiative of Resource X is to use our data to drive our budget decisions. We have an amazing asset management system that promotes our decision-making, and we continue to improve the inputs into that system. Road, Bridge, and Stormwater Maintenance Division is currently finishing a countywide assessment of our pavement conditions that we're going to use to build a proactive multi-year pavement program, with a future assessment that will be utilized to assist in building our asset management system's degradation algorithm so that we can further refine that plan. We're going to continue prior year's efforts to carry forward our aggressive stormwater capital program, which includes joining forces with the City of Naples and Collier County Public Utilities to leverage our funds for cohesive projects consistent with the infrastructure and asset management objective. As the county manager has stated on multiple occasions, most residents do not drive by and say, wow, what an impressive stormwater system you have. But in situations like last week, we must remember that the underground infrastructure is crucial for our quality of life. And with the renewed focus on proactive maintenance and capital infrastructure, last week's events were manageable. I'm not saying that they were without issue, but this county performed much better than other surrounding communities. We will continue to prepare several other major capital projects for construction, which are identified in the annual update and inventory report, as well as were mentioned in Mr. Johnson's introductory remarks, while continuing a variety of bridge projects, intersection improvements, and roadway enhancements. We continue to anticipate challenges such as supply chain delays, project cost inflation, and a stressed labor force. We work very closely with our Human Resources Division on hard-to-fill positions, attempting to ensure that we can remain competitive on the market. We're also attending hiring fairs and fostering our relationships with the higher education providers in our area to engage potential employees. As you are aware, we leverage state and federal funds to ensure efficient use of the county's local funding sources. However, even with these efforts, there are unfunded needs in the current program for both roads and stormwater. For many years, you've heard me come before you and say, we're gonna need money, we're gonna need money, we're gonna need money. And now we're finally to that point. For FY25, roadway unfunded need is approximately $20 million. It's anticipated that the local option fuel tax will be reimposed effective December 2025 to cover a large portion of our anticipated needs. However, short-term borrowing opportunities may be necessary to bridge the gap, no pun intended. Strategic funding plans will be necessary to cover the anticipated stormwater capital shortfall, which is estimated at $91 million for FY25. This is in large part perpetuated by the need to keep up with our local utility providers, whereby the stormwater infrastructure replacement is necessary and must be closely coordinated. On a brighter note, because I'm not all about the gloom and doom, I want to point out our cost of landscaping maintenance per mile. It has remained steady from prior year's budgets. The team has worked hard to contain the cost while our contractor labor has increased in price tremendously. You have seen these contracts come before you with 30 and 40% increases, and the fact that we've been able to keep the price per mile the same is no unrecognized feat by the team. Our strategies have included reallocating maintenance efforts to our in-house forces versus the more expensive contracted services, modifying our mulch color from a very specific Collier County blend to cocoa brown, and I would venture to the guess that no one noticed. And we're also reevaluating our irrigation to ensure that we're not overwatering. In addition, the team has developed a new cross-section for an inverted median that will be used in our upcoming capital projects, and as we are replacing plant material along existing corridors, we will work to incorporate that new design. We are actively implementing the initiatives identified through our exercise with ResourceX that will assist in developing new revenue sources and prioritization of our existing sources to achieve the goal to plan and build public infrastructure to efficiently, effectively, and sustainably meet the needs of the community. All divisions have met the budget compliance outlined by the County Manager's Office and your board policy. And with that, I thank you for your consideration of the budget that we have presented to you today.
Did ResourceX come up with cocoa brown?
No, actually, that was our team, and it's an off-the-shelf color of mulch, so.
That's good.
So we're not paying extra for a special color.
Exactly. Exactly. You're not paying extra for that special blend.
And since you brought up the landscape meeting, that makes me really, the design is something that I've talked about for years. I know we have some constructed already that are inverted. Are we able to do any kind of cost comparison with the ones that are already inverted in comparison to a similar length of median, similar plantings, and compare the cost yet?
We cannot yet, and I will tell you one of the reasons why I will do that for this upcoming year. We hired a new irrigation person. And we stole them from the botanical gardens. But one of the things that they've been able to do is adjust our watering significantly. And so looking at last year's cost versus comparatively, I don't think will give us a great comparison. But by doing that this year with our new watering protocols, I think that will give us a more apples to apples comparison. So yes, we will do that.
And in the you know, that was one of the things that Donna, I don't know, you might have been in here, but we were taught the garden is contributing the plantings for the berm at the rifle range, the gun range out east, and I know that. And she even mentions in this letter thanking us for the collaboration, utilizing the garden to make planning recommendations and so on and so forth. And have you found that to be, is that what's actually leading up to some of these cost reductions is more Florida-friendly planning, less irrigation, less fertilization?
That is definitely some of the way to be able to contain our costs, as well as the significant reduction in watering. And we've been very dry until last week. So yes, we've been able to go through and significantly change how we were running our irrigation from prior. We are utilizing partnerships with the Naples Botanical Gardens for our beach berm. They were part of our stakeholder group, but then we regularly meet with them with regard to our landscaping plant material that we're choosing, and so on and so forth.
Stormwater swales,
all of
littoral
those
shelves,
things, yes.
all those things. Yeah.
Where we are definitely coordinating with them on those items.
Love it. Love it.
Mr. Fabian.
I was simply going to add that while first and foremost we seek cost efficiency, we work on the expense side in the recommendations for efficiencies, service level questions, partnerships that could take place. Equally important for resource optimization, especially for high priority programs that have strong alignment with countywide priorities. We have to look at the business model overall. And so both, just to reiterate, you'll find in your programmatic report examples from Grand Junction Regional Airport, Greensville, Spartanburg, South Carolina, all the way to larger airports, including City of Atlanta, Hartsfield Airport, some of the fee models that these are among the best practices. We try to come in with an outside point of view just to help demonstrate for these types of business operations at the airport and also for your stormwater operation, these are just areas of opportunity to consider for the revenue side of the house.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, thank you. Moving on to public services.
Terrific. Thank you, Chris. As staff files in, I'll come up with a couple of remarks. First of all, I want to
Just
thank...
for information, you don't have any staff filing in, so you're the Lone Ranger now.
You're flying solo there,
Just so
Commissioner
you know.
McDaniel. I find that's usually where I am.
Yep, you may need to call somebody.
Maybe I might have a lifeline phone call out there.
Phone a
yeah.
friend.
Right. In any event, I want to thank the board for their attention to the budget this year. I know it's been a pretty heavy lift. We started back very early doing workshops, dealing with the strategic plan, the AUIR, and the budget, the concept of the budget policy, and we're down the path on a new process that I think is adding considerable value. In any event, I'm going to just lean into this one a little bit, see if we can get through it. The Public Service Department provides really our most front-facing services. They provide a wide range of public amenities, recreational opportunities, natural resource management, and access to health, wellness, and human services consistent with the strategic focus areas of responsible governance, infrastructure and asset management. The division includes community human services, domestic animal services, library, museums, operations and veteran services, parks and recreation, and university extension services. Additionally, through contractual arrangements, the Public Services Department has oversight responsibilities for the Florida Department of Health, and Public Services is also responsible for managing mental health contracts with David Lawrence Center and NAMI of Collier County. The number of positions in the division is about 447. There is an expanded request for 4 additional DAS positions. Additionally, the DAS budget that you're looking at moves 11 animal control officers into the code enforcement section. That is one of the things that came up through our Resource X evaluation, making sure that we're resourcing things right and achieving the benefit of same over same, where we have similar services that are working in one area that have systems in place. When we can coordinate those together, we're seeing it as a win. So, having said that, this department is one of the most largely funded by the general fund. There are revenue sources, certainly in parks, but the revenue primarily comes from the general fund. Museums are funded by a small portion of the general fund, but principally a transfer from TDC, which introduces another factor that we're considering, which is the appropriate use, potential changes to the way TDC monies are used to fund operations, and that would include the museum operations. Additionally, most recently, we've discussed several aspects of Public Services Department. One, the capital renewal and replacement shifted largely from parks to facilities management, except where it is specifically required to be done by the parks personnel. Privatization of the aquatics has been discussed. Similarly, we're looking at alternatives for how we can best achieve our goals with the museum division. Parks fee policy is under review, and I've already mentioned the TDC utilization for museum, the TDC utilization for our aquatics program, or perhaps more specifically for Sun and Fun, as it benefits the tourists and the tourism industry, is one that we're going to be considering going forward. Mr. Hanrahan is beside me. He is the interim parks director, and he has been doing yeoman's duty, given that the parks is without a permanent director, and it is also shy its maintenance department head. So, having said that, if there are any questions, we will respond to them. Is that my compliance view up there, Chris? Yes. Very nice.
Why the big dip in veteran services? I mean, and sometimes, you know, a change is a savings, or it's you're doing something more efficient, so it doesn't always mean a cut. But I'll just start there, and I had some other questions, but I might see what everybody else has. But that's one that sort of jumped out at me. Veteran services. It's not a huge operation, small team, but what are they doing different that they don't need as much money?
Mr. Finn?
Yes, sir.
I can answer that question. The reduction there, sir, is part of that workforce prioritization pool. There was a position there that had remained vacant.
Oh, so it's
the
FTE movement.
Exactly.
Okay. So, but on their operating budget and the things that make them work and perform, there's not a reduction.
They're up to 3.5%.
Yeah,
that was allowed in compliance.
Chris, can you put up slide 25 out of your initial show, which provides for there's actually 20 total positions coming out of the Public Services Department.
Let me pull that up. Give me 1 second. Got to get out of this one.
And again, the concept of the pool is as the requirements for additional positions are demonstrated to the county manager always has the flexibility, but this provides a centralized budget so that these positions are not squirreled away where it's difficult for us to see them. It's certainly impossible for the board to see them when they're spread across a $2 billion budget. So this is the concept, and you'll see that if you look at the screen, the prioritization pool is made up of about 20 positions from the Public Services Department. Libraries, we've talked about at length. Have had historically considerable difficulty filling positions. Library Services is one the board has looked at their last meeting, and staff will be presenting that, I believe, in the first meeting in July to wrap that service level discussion up, at least for the moment. Parks always has a large number of vacancies. That's the largest department here, in excess of 200 positions. And then Operations and Veteran Services is both Veteran Services and the Operations section, and they've had some vacancies. So as the needs come up, the county manager will reallocate those positions as they're needed.
Mr. Finn, also just to mention, when you look at those numbers with both libraries and parks, they actually have positions that are out and open for recruitment. So as we get those vacancies filled and then we reevaluate that, then we'll be able to look at the use of those positions.
I was just going to add the increase in domestic animal services is fully support that. We've gotten a lot of emails from folks, but it goes without saying, we know the overhaul that you and the team are leading to turn some things around there and some concerns. I would leave you with the same thing that we always tell the sheriff. If you as you march down the next couple months, if you need more, you discover more, don't be shy about coming here. Some departments, they're here once a year, they give us their budget, they're happy, and they're able to move forward. That's one that's very fluid, obviously, DAS. So I think it's not lost on all of us up here that as you discover things or come up with better ideas or something that needs to be done, don't be a stranger in these chambers here to talk to us about maybe some adjustments that may need to be even made further to help get DAS accelerated even more.
Yes, and I do appreciate that comment, and I'm going to quickly say that Mr. French is leading the charge on that, and he will be before the board talking about GMD. The 11 animal control officers I mentioned are shifting over to his side of the house through code enforcement, and with him taking the lead on DAS, the board will have an opportunity to ask kind of some more specific questions on DAS and the direction it's taking operationally.
And if I may, we had this conversation with the advisory board last week. Part of the strategic ask of these four is their known deficiencies in the staffing. We're spending time getting our arms around what it is that everybody is doing there, what their assigned job is, or what they were hired to do, and what they might actually be doing, so that when we come to you, we're asking in a meaningful way versus sort of trying to throw something at the wall and see what sticks. And so we assured the advisory committee as well that when we have our arms around that need and understanding what we might need to ask for, we will certainly come back at the appropriate time, be it mid-year or at some time to the board. So this is not tying our hands. This is 4 and we're done. It's 4 because we know we for sure need these, and then we're going to evaluate any additional asks.
And that's a nice segue into what I was going to say. I would like for us, utilizing Resource X, to be reviewing the job descriptions of everybody that works for us. There is no job that needs to get done that you don't do if you're a county employee. Everybody, and it flow. I think, in my rationale is everything flows with the pool of FTEs that are requisite. When we hire and the relocation of DAS officers over to code, similarities in how they do and what they do. Same thing at Parks and Rec. I'm just pointing at you because you're sitting there. I'll point at Trinity. Same thing in transportation. So if the broom needs to be pushed, somebody that's working there needs to push the broom. And that's a maneuver in efficiencies that will actually allow us to aggregate how many people we really are short, instead of having this org chart that says we're 200 people shy. Maybe not.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Saunders. Yeah, pardon me. A couple questions. I'm trying to get my arms around the number of personnel in domestic animal services and the new hires, and because you indicate that actual, we have 36 FTEs, but current under 2025, it says 27, and I'm not sure why that number dropped. And then we have 4 expanded, which brings us to 31, which is still obviously less than the 36 that we currently have.
We have temporary service with staff services that fill, that round out those numbers.
Okay,
So,
not short.
no. And that's part of the evaluation process as well as, we do use our staff services to help augment our FTEs. But there are times, as you see with the Immokalee CRA, where that position's actually now going to become an FTE. Part of this evaluation process for DAS is it time that we should be hardening those positions? Secondly, it's nice to have the flexibility of the staff service positions for times like now we're in kitten season, where we might need extra people, but a few months from now, we may not. And so that gives us that type of flexibility, not through the FTE headcount, but that is part of this evaluation process. My personal belief is that we'll be coming to you at some point asking for some different or additional positions, but we want to be very thorough and meaningful. We know the 4 we're asking for are holes that aren't going to be reevaluated.
We have approximately 200 volunteers.
Yes.
DAS. And from what I've been able to observe, a lot of those volunteers, if not all of them, but certainly a large number of them, work very hard, long hours, cleaning kennels and doing a lot of things that would be maybe less attractive for some people. Do we do anything to kind of honor them or reward them in any way? I know obviously they're volunteers, but do we have a small budget set aside for some types of recognitions and
Pizza once a week.
pizza? Yeah, so, something that may sound a little silly, but just
Not
something to.
I'll look at Mr. French. I don't believe so, but
Thank you, Commissioners. Jamie French, for the record. I've been there for a month and 3 weeks now. So I'm up for the challenge as well as continuing to do my other responsibilities. I would tell you that we've appreciated all of your support, and I'd also tell you is that I had no visibility or no knowledge, and I'm certainly cognizant of it now that the volunteer force that we have is second to none. These are amazing people of all different age groups that aren't willing. Quite honestly, they'll outwork me, and I'm up to about 73 hours a week now. But I will tell you that yes. So one of the things that we did is a collaborative space effort to clean the place up, to share break room areas, refrigeration areas, cool down areas. But there is an annual recognition of the volunteers, kind of a thank you. Clearly, we've not got to that yet. We're primarily focused on the site to bring the site back up to both safe and effective means and methods for operations. We're looking at everything from the site plans, and that's what the volunteers are asking for first and foremost. To come in and not leave a day with wet feet because the yards are flooded. And so through Jamie Cook, Lisa Blackledge, Trinity's folks, Marshall Miller, we've been all hands on deck. And I appreciate what Commissioner McDaniel said, because I can tell you I've been out in the middle of the night in the pipe off Burning Tree Drive. I've responded, as many of you know, with you. And that is what we do at Growth Management, no doubt. But that's also what our other colleagues are there to do as well. So there's no separation of duties. We're all in. We all do it, along with the volunteers, and we certainly recognize them and thank them every day.
Well, then I'll just plant the seed in terms of a budget or something for the volunteers. But then I want to raise another question that's perhaps we'll just need some information generated. Obviously, next Tuesday, we're going to be waiving fees for certain types of services at DAS to promote more spay and neutering, that sort of thing. And I'm wondering if, we charge for different services, we charge for adoptions. I'm wondering if we just didn't charge for spay and neuter and adoptions and all of those things, because we spend a lot of money collecting that money, and I'm wondering if we really collect enough to make it worth it. And if we had free service there, whether that would reduce the number of strays that we have to go chase down. Just some analysis as to how can we be really most efficient. Charging fees may be a way to go. That's the way we've been doing it, but maybe not charging would be a more efficient way to save money on the other end. So I just want to plant that seed, because I have not been convinced that we're waiving fees to promote more adoptions and that sort of thing. Well, why have the fees in the first place? Because we need to have those adoptions all year long.
Yes, sir. So we are evaluating those fee structures, but to your point, the longer term goal, and even beginning in this budget, is to look at those community services that we provide to folks, including low cost or no cost spay neuter and low cost, no cost veterinary, because part of trying to get a hold of the pet overpopulation centers around those things. And the problem is that you've heard probably time after time that there's a shortage of veterinarians, which there is. It can be very difficult to get a veterinarian appointment, even if you have the money to get those veterinary services. But sometimes people that are otherwise very good pet owners just don't have the $300 or $500 or $700 to have their animal fixed. And so we're looking, now that we have a surgical vet on staff, we're looking at different programs that we can stand up to provide those veterinary services and the spay neuter services to the community, along with community cats, and really growing that is essentially a community veterinary program. That's really what we're there for, and it keeps animals from coming through our doors that then we are going to have to take care of and then try to find homes for. So it's a constant vicious circle.
There was one thing that was raised at one of the advisory board meetings recently, and that was a pet pantry.
Yes.
Because there are some folks that have a lot of pets and they can't afford to feed them, and so they're mistreated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering if we have any, I think you've mentioned that there is some effort in that regard, but is that something we need to look at in terms of a more permanent type of a program?
Yeah, Mr. French and I have been talking about this. So not only working with some of our local food banks, but also being able to have some of those resources on site. The Humane Society has a similar program where if you have somebody that comes in, sometimes we get people that are asking to surrender their pet, but it's simply that they need assistance, maybe, just bridging that gap of being able to feed their pet, or sometimes back to the veterinary is that their pet might have something wrong with them and they need some veterinary assistance. So we're looking at those to be able to have those on-site services, as well as partner agencies to help fairly deal with the volume of donations that we get, things like pet food. We have cat sanctuaries that are in need. One of the biggest needs that they have is food. If you're feeding 300 cats, that's a lot of cat food. And there are people that are very giving in the community, so we're getting our arms around that. We have a donation program currently. It's just not maximized and efficient.
Thank you.
Amy, just one quick question. Well, really two. I like the idea of the no costs. We know that advantage that would be, but then the flip side of that is anybody done the math to see what that delta would be? Because I'm sure that revenue that we are getting now, although like you say, it's 6 one, half dozen of the other. But if we didn't get that revenue, then you'd be coming back to us probably saying, hey, now everything's no cost, so we need another $400,000. So I guess in future updates, seeing if the juice is worth the squeeze there. I love the idea as long as we can absorb it. So that would be one thing.
And it may be a tiered system. So similar to the way that we provide other incentives and other assistance through the county, there may be qualifications, and we can work. Mr. French has been talking to our housing group about different ways where people they qualify for certain types of assistance. They may qualify then for assistance with their pets, up to somebody that just might need a little bit of a break. They could afford to pay for the cost, but it's not the cost plus. And so I think that's part of what we need to get our arms around and develop that tiered program.
And then, Dave, you actually said what I was hoping to hear, that I'm not stealing pizza from volunteers, but if you really sit down and talk with the volunteers, and obviously you have, I'm sure they'd love free pizza, but like you put it perfectly, what they want to see is leadership action, the facility getting better, all the stuff they've been screaming for. So obviously you've already seen some of the things that are the meat and potatoes down in DAS that the volunteers see every day, and so I'm sure they'd love a free lunch. And I don't want to take it away from them, but the priority is exactly what you said. They don't want to go home with wet feet. They don't want to leave feeling disappointed about the facility that they work in. They don't want to feel like they're doing the heavy lifting of DAS and the county positions, the county leadership. the county commissioners aren't there with them in the trenches supporting them. So it sounds like, you've jumped in with both feet, and those are the kind of things that we're up here to support, are the action items, the heavy lifting stuff that maybe has been missing for a while.
Yes, sir, I appreciate it. And so, Commissioners, we're looking at alternative sites with regards to some of our veterinarian care. There are some sites that we're aware of that may be available, where we've evaluated the facility from both the health department standards as well as, because this is a true medical facility. So we're always maintaining and interested in maintaining that sterile field for our medical professionals that work within there, whether you're a vet tech or whether you're a veterinarian. At the end of the day, clearly it's a patient. We want to treat it as such. We also want to be able to provide the best and most reliable service to our community. And I think what the volunteers and the community is looking for is more so of a case management approach, so that we're reuniting pets where they belong, whether or not, and then doing a full investigation. By moving your ACOs under code enforcement, we're finding that it may actually qualify the county for additional community development block grant dollars. We're investigating that now. And so there may be an offset to that, and we may be able to maximize that site by even considering putting a clinic off-site versus actually making the investment into a 20, 25-year-old, 30-year-old building that was never intended. And so when you go through this change of use with these types of structures, it's not that it can't be done, but when you start to look at metal buildings that are not sprinkled, that were never intended to be sprinkled, that the demand has changed, the community expectations have changed, your expectations, and then the methods and approaches have changed with regards to veterinarian care and the science. We're cognizant of that, and so we're trying to keep this all in mind, but I will tell you, as I'm a big Six Sigma guy, I think what gets measured gets done, and you can't manage it if you can't measure it. And so everything we're doing is measured, and automation is a key here. By incorporating some of the ACO activity into your code enforcement software, you as a board, the industry as a community, spends better than $1 million a year in that software, and we self-support it. They've designed it, they support it, they love it, and hopefully your aides and you and your constituents are seeing that. Everything's in real time with us, and that's what we intend to bring them to.
I will say that I have, come on up, Chris. I will say that I've been out there, and there was a lot of chatter when we were making some changes a couple of months ago about, board directors and some of the decisions that were made. But to Commissioner McDaniel's comment about, somebody's got to, if you work for the county, you got to be willing to push the broom. And I can tell you that under Jamie's leadership out there, things have changed, and they've changed rapidly. And I want to say publicly, thank you for your leadership out there. Thank you for your common sense. Thank you for your creativity to come forth with a lot of ideas that you're coming forth with to make very positive changes within DAS. So I know you don't need to have your horn tooted, but I'm tooting.
It's my colleagues, sir. I'm so blessed and so lucky to be able to work with such skilled people. And it's the sheriff's office, and it's you, and it's these community members. And I am not a keyboard warrior. I know the truth doesn't always get in the way of a good story, but I will tell you is that if anybody wants to meet with us, I am here. You'll see me there on a Saturday and Sunday, and I get it. I move fast, but that's okay. You expect that of me, and I'm going to deliver as will our colleagues.
I'd simply reinforce, this is definitely a tough business across all the organizations that we work in. So nothing new to that story. We were encouraged by at least some of the revenue that is coming in. Amy, to your point, we've seen for some of the generous donations that come in, everything from sponsor a pet programs. We have documentation on Humane Society of Charlotte has initiated these, a tiered rate structure like you discussed, including premium services that you may already be implementing, but to consider ways to bring in new revenues for those who can afford it, such as training and grooming. So on the tiered rate structure, we've definitely seen that. Back to code enforcement and lost pets, we've seen, bring in the data, but a rising trend in microchipping of animals to properly return them to their owners, such as what we see in Austin, Texas, and Miami-Dade County, doing some local partnerships with local veterinarians to have them participate as well. Share the cost.
Quick question for him. Has any analysis been done with regard to the expense associated with spay and neutering, any incentivization for people to do that in relationship to the long-term effects of more animals running around? Has that been done?
It's not, that won't show up in our report, but I took note of, that came up earlier in the discussion, and we'll go back to see who has been doing that sort of exact analysis. We took the perspective of what are all the ways to.
To me, this is common sense. I mean, if people are disincentivized because of an expense associated with spade and neuter, and they don't do the spade and neuter, we're going to end up with more animals that we have to then in turn care for, keep, medicate, adopt, all of the other things that goes along. So, and I know that he's an interesting fellow, but Tom Kepp over at SNPs is a huge advocate of that, works a lot with me in Immokalee, and has a relationship with Gulf Coast Humane Society in Fort Myers. So there may be, just to give you a little path, there may be some people to talk to there with regard to that. I don't like calling it a cost-benefit ratio when you're talking about animals' lives, but at the end of the day, if there is a potential for that scaled system or no expense to incentivize participation, to me it just makes total sense.
Cost prevention in the future.
I think you're going to have a couple speakers that are going to speak to something similar. We have a lot of community members that are very interested in this topic and have done a lot of research.
Good. Good.
We have 3 registered speakers with 1 additional speaker seating time. Your first speaker is Jim Rich, who has been seated 3 additional minutes from Charlotte Herbert, who is present in the back of the room, and he will be followed by Eva Front.
Thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jim Rich. I am co-founder of the nonprofit cat rescue organization For the Love of Cats, and recently resigned as chairman of the DAS Advisory Board after serving on that board for 11 years. I'm here today to speak about the thousands of stray and abandoned cats in our county and to request funding for a program that was approved and supported by previous commissioners, but whose trapping, sterilizing, and financial responsibility has fallen primarily on the public or rescue groups such as mine. I'm speaking about our community cat program. This is my organization's 21st year with recorded numbers of over 5,000 cats and kittens we have trapped and sterilized, all with personal or donated funds. Until recently, we were able to work with the veterinary community with discounted surgical fees. However, with the extreme shortage of vets and vet techs in our county in comparison to our growing population, many of the vet practices are closed to new clientele, can barely accommodate their existing ones, and are reluctant to continue offering discounts to rescue groups versus full-paying customers. DAS has attempted to help when it has a vet, but even then can barely keep up with its own inventory and must limit the number of ferals and strays it can surgically accommodate. 3 months ago, my organization made the decision to stop relying on just DAS and the few weekly surgical appointments we could still get from 1 or 2 of the vet clinics. By DAS giving us permission to use our surgical room, we independently purchased our own medical equipment and supplies, hired our own vet and vet techs on their day off from their regular practice, purchased an additional 40 traps and carriers, and rented a large cargo van. The day before our actual surgical event, called Catnip Clinic, we trapped 41 cats. These were all transported to DAS for sterilization, vaccinated, and ear-notched. They were then held overnight at various locations and returned to their familiar surroundings to be cared for as community cats. This was such a successful event that we immediately contacted our county manager, Amy Patterson, who's been wonderful, by the way, working with, and requested permission to again use the facilities at DAS. Our second clinic is now scheduled just 9 days from now on June 29th, again at DAS. We hope that Amy and this board will support future spay days at DAS as we can schedule them. We realize that the only way to ever make a difference in the enormous stray cat population is by going into a neighborhood and doing volume trapping. 1 or 2 cats at a time will never allow us to get ahead of the problem. In fact, we just purchased our own cargo van to help achieve such a goal. We currently have 3 full-time employees for marketing, trapping, and fundraising. Although we serve our community with programs other than TNR, this has been and will continue to be our top priority. Our success will never be limited by our effort, but can be by insufficient funding. For over 20 years now, I have listened to our politicians encourage our animal rescue organizations to form partnerships to address our ever-increasing stray and abandoned animal population. Today, I am asking you to fulfill your commitments toward the Community Cat Program by being a participant in this partnership. I am not asking for direct funding to any organization. I am requesting financial support for any organization working in partnership with DAS in helping pay for supplies and veterinary expenses for sterilization programs such as ours. This can be funded directly through the DAS budget by having them provide the necessary surgical supplies and paying the veterinarians and vet techs as independent contractors the same way the Bissell Foundation was paid when they were hired last year. I know you all profess animal advocacy. There are reputed to be close to 50,000 stray and abandoned cats in our county alone. Please consider my request regarding financial partnering and the potential for what it could accomplish. And I'd like to thank Jamie and Amy again. Everything I've heard lately, you are doing a phenomenal job, and I do support, even though I'm not on the advisory board anymore, I fully support their efforts and will continue to support this county and the animals and the people in it. So thank you so much.
Your next speaker is Eva Front. Wait.
Jim, I just wanted to ask you something. First, thanks for what you do. You and I traded a couple of emails where I think we lost a little something in translation, so I think face-to-face is better. But I know one of your frustrations serving on the board so long, and maybe I'm paraphrasing this incorrectly, is a lot of times I think you felt like you had the voice, but maybe not people listening or a person to go to. I really hope, regardless if you're on the board or not, as a material, your expertise and your eyes and ears of what you've seen down at DAS is critical and valuable. And I appreciate the shout out to Ms. Patterson, but I hope also that you and Mr. French have opened up a dialogue or get a chance to at least talk once so he can get some valuable feedback from you as to what you've seen and heard, and maybe some things that haven't been advertised as much, to the county staff, but it was sort of in your own circle of influence. I think it'd be very valuable for him to, talk with you if you haven't already.
I think there have been some miscommunications between Mr. French and myself lately.
Okay.
And I work very hard to resolve those things. The only way we're going to accomplish anything is by working together. And we don't by adversity and by not working together. So the DAS has my full 100% cooperation. I think Amy will tell you, I've had 3 or 4 different meetings with her and one with Jamie also.
Okay.
And they are welcome to pick my brain anytime they want. And as far as we're concerned, we're good.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all again.
I'd like to ask a question also, sir. Where have you found the heaviest population of you said about 50,000 stray cats within
They are, and this is actually statistically, that's one of the low numbers that's given. That's from the University of Wisconsin, which breaks all these things down. Right now, we're looking at areas even like Immokalee, and as part of our clinic we'll be doing, there's a woman there that has 100 stray cats that she's feeding, which are not fixed. So we're bringing our van into that area, and we're picking up as many of those as we can. That's going to take 2 or 3 different sessions. And then there are other pockets in Bayshore and some other communities, which is a matter of communicating with people. We're putting up flyers and trying to enlist the public to help us. Yeah, and you're right. They can't afford it. They don't have transportation, and so we're trying to provide that transportation with the van we have and do everything we can.
I remember the Gulfgate Plaza area behind there, between Weeks and the back of the plaza. At night, you would see hundreds of cats underneath that building back
Right.
there. And I was just curious, do you think it's also a people training thing also? I think to educate the public, of these things, because if we're having a high concentration of 100 cats around one particular home, then that's not fair to the other people in the neighborhood.
In the areas where we're finding those high concentrations, communication is a problem, and the people are afraid to come forward because they're afraid they'll be fined or they'll be arrested or whatever. So we're trying to go from community to community and establish relationships with them, earn their trust. and then go into that area and set down 30 or 40 traps at a time. So it'll happen. It's just going to take time, and it's not going to happen unless we all work together. And again, we only have so much funding, so we've spent privately just as much as we can. So that's why we're looking for help.
And I remember reading your email also. I don't think I didn't respond to it, but I did read it, and something did stick out. When I read it, you were talking about chain of command. I believe that was you that made that comment.
That is correct.
If I remember correctly, the board's, your job was to tell us things we might not be told by our actual employees. And I think in your comment, you said you didn't want to bother us, and you went to your chain, you like to hold to the chain of command, and you were going directly to the employees of DAS, which would not necessarily be the chain of command. It would be the Board of County Commissioners.
I should have come to each of you individually. I did not want to speak here because, frankly, for as many years as I was involved with DAS, it had a very bad connotation to it. People didn't want to bring their animals in. They're afraid they're going to be killed. They're afraid they're going to be mistreated. It was a kill shelter for many, many years. When I started there, they were putting down 6,000 animals a year. I'm going back several years. So I didn't want to speak as a public forum where everyone, the public, can hear us and tell you my grievances and stir up things when you may not be hearing, they may not be getting the full picture of everything. But where I made a mistake, truthfully, is instead of going to you individually, if I could have done that instead of not coming to you in this format.
Now, I encourage that to anyone out there that my door, at least me personally, my door's open to anyone who wants to come have a one-on-one talk with me.
Well, I am grateful for that, and in the future, believe me, I will be. So I really respect all of you and appreciate your time, so thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir.
Your next speaker is Eva Front. She'll be followed on Zoom by Lori Harris.
So can I just say quick remark to Mr. Rich's comment about the financing? I think if we start incentivizing the local rescues, and I mean all of them, by, say, paying maybe $75 for every cat that is brought in for sterilization, long term, our county will benefit from that versus just picking and choosing a couple of the rescues that are preferable to the county, but work with everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Eva Front, and I'm full-time Collier County resident. Today, we all have been presented with proposed budget for domestic animal services. I know firsthand how hard our county leadership have been working in the past few months to improve service quality at DAS, and the progress is truly remarkable. I'm here today to ask for your consideration in the budget for next year to address the influx of unwanted animals and support policy changes leading to long-term cost savings for our county. County statistics show that the majority, 90% of animals are coming in as strays, and roughly only 10% of animals are being reclaimed. We need to address and act on resolution pertaining to creating programs for the community with low cost or no cost spay and neuter initiatives for animals most commonly relinquished to DAS. Slide number 2. We can double and triple DAS budget every year, but if true animal control and sterilization programs, especially for low-income families, are not being introduced, the taxpayer funding will never be enough. I hope you appreciate the 5-year intake snapshot for the same month, the month of May. The cat intake to DAS doubled within only 3 years for the month of May. Going by Mr. James French assessment, each animal costs between $25 and $30 a day to care for at the shelter. And the only way to reduce the expenses is by actively implementing County Commissioner's Resolution or Animal Care Sterilization Act listed in the budget, pages 2 and 5, preventing the tsunami of unwanted pets, saving our money, and stopping animal cruelty. When it comes to pet overpopulation, currently Collier County is heavily or exclusively relying on small, non-for-profit organizations with limited financing and resources. Average age of people running around our community in Florida weather attempting to stop senseless breeding, it's about 75 years young. As you can see by the numbers presented, we are all losing this battle. There are no new organizations entering the rescue field, and the existing ones are tired, broke, and aging out. Please, Commissioners, when considering the AS budget for next year, be generous in supporting introduction of robust spay and neuter programs. These programs will not only reduce pet overpopulation, but also decrease the number of animals entering the shelter, lessen the burden on animal control dealing with stray animals, carry on the concept of stewardship over creation, including animals, as a core principle in Christianity.
Thank you, Ms. Mott.
And somebody keep this chart around right there. This is a graphic of what we were talking about the low or no cost spade and neutering program. I mean, that.
Did you make this slide or you found it somewhere?
This is online, the previous ones. The first one is from online.
Well, if it was online, it has to be true.
But the second one, I kind of went through the statistics over the years and put the numbers together just to show you the increase, basically doubled in.
Oh, you said tsunami. I picked up, and that's a great word. Yeah, and then,
yes.
And then this slide popped up. I was like, yeah, it's a tsunami.
So that basically because. County manager mentioned we are in the kitten season. Sadly, the kitten season in Florida in this weather, we are experiencing all year round, right? We don't have snow, we don't have severe weather that will stop that. It's all year around. And that directly translates, and I'm speaking right now as a taxpayer, because we can put so many more millions into that budget. But if we don't act on prevention, nothing will happen. I can compare it to our public services, maybe with libraries. If you have people stealing books coming in and you have loss of $100,000 a year in books, you don't just replace them. You go in and try to figure out what is causing that loss and try to stop it. So I'm asking for the same approach with our domestic animal services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your final speaker under the Public Services section is Lori Harris. Lori, I see you've unmuted yourself. You have 3 minutes. Please begin.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good afternoon. I'm sorry, I'm on Central Time right now. I have to begin thanking you all for shedding a light on domestic animal services, to Ms. Patterson, Mr. French for their yeoman's work in turning it around. I also have to agree with Ms. Front and Mr. Rich. We must stop the overpopulation out in the field, or there will never be a budget large enough. The animals will just forever keep coming in. So enforcement, as to Commissioner McDaniel, what he was saying with Tom Kep, enforcement out in the field is so key to lowering the population in the shelter. The changes at the shelter are just tremendous. The facilities team, I cannot begin to thank everybody enough. It is infinitely better. We are still going home with wet feet, but we know that that is going to end shortly. So we are so optimistic in going there every day and just making a difference for the animals. So mostly I have to thank you all for your work and your time and your commitment to making this all better. Thank you.
And that was your final public speaker under this section.
All right, great. We are at 12:15. It's time for lunch. Let's get back here at 1 o'clock.
Ms. Hall, I just wanted to make a mention. You weren't here. Your husband made a comment about your shopping. So while you're having lunch, you might want to, I just wanted to arm you with that. You know, it was.